All right, let's dive into one of the most powerful, most fascinating archetypes from Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction. We're going to deconstruct the siren. So let's kick things off with the core promise of the siren. You see, this isn't just about being attractive. It's about offering something much, much deeper. A complete and total escape from the boring, predictable, everyday world. According to the source material, the siren isn't just a person. They're more like a psychological force. The whole idea is to embody a target's deepest fantasies so perfectly that their logical mind just shuts down. This allows the siren to take the driver's seat of their desires and their libido. So, how do they do it? What's the secret sauce behind this almost hypnotic allure? Well, it all starts with a set of very distinct, very calculated behaviors and characteristics.
Okay, first, let's talk about their physical presence. A siren's movements are always intentional, slow, and graceful. Think about it. In a world that's always rushing, this creates an aura of calm that's immediately captivating. It just draws you in.
And this is really interesting. Their appearance isn't just about looking good, it's a strategic weapon. A siren's style is different on purpose. It's a huge visual cue that says, I am not like anyone you have ever met before. It's not just how they look, it's how they sound. A siren's whole communication style is completely unique. They speak slowly, their voice is pitched just a little bit lower, and they use these really deliberate pauses. And what that does is it makes every single word feel heavy, precious, and full of meaning. So how slow are we talking? Well, the sources actually give us a number, about 20 to 30% slower than your normal speaking pace. It's a small change, but it adds this weight and substance to your voice that just pulls people in. Now, this is absolutely key. The mystery they create isn't about telling lies, not at all. It's about strategically holding back information. By never, ever giving the full story, the siren becomes a puzzle that the target's brain becomes obsessed with solving. They just have to know more. Okay, so we've covered the what, the characteristics. Now for the really cool part, the how. How does this allure actually work on a neurological level? This is where it gets pretty fascinating. The source material suggests that a siren's success is basically a form of neurological manipulation. Their entire way of being, their presence, their voice, their mystery, is designed to short-circuit our normal, rational thought processes. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. The siren's unusual presence, their slow speech, their deliberate movements, it all bypasses the logical, thinking brain and speaks directly to the emotional, feeling brain. That's where desire and fancy live. The analytical brain is told to just take a backseat. So how do they pull this off? Well, it really boils down to two primary tactics that work together like a one-two punch. First, they create this powerful, almost fake sense of intimacy. And second, they plant these little seeds of curiosity that the target just can't stop thinking about. You know, normally when we make eye contact with someone, it's for maybe 2 seconds, right? It's polite. But a siren, they hold it for 4 seconds, maybe even longer. It feels like a small thing, but our brains are literally hardwired to interpret that as a sign of a deep, possibly romantic connection. And that's the whole game right there. It's just a simple, non-verbal cue, but it's powerful enough to completely shift the dynamic. The target stops analyzing and starts feeling, which is exactly where the siren wants them. It's the same idea with how they end conversations, by saying something vague like, oh, it's an important meeting, I'll tell you about it later, and then giving a little smile. They create a mental loop. It's like an earworm, but for a person. The target is left wondering, obsessing, just replaying that moment over and over. Now, you might be thinking this is all just for dating or romance, but no. These principles are being used all around us for mass influence in almost every part of the modern world. So it's important to remember the siren is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. In this context, seduction is a much bigger game. It's about influence, and sometimes it's about control. I mean, these are truly timeless strategies. You look at a historical figure like Cleopatra, she absolutely used these arts to captivate leaders and forge powerful alliances. And then you fast forward to today, and you can see a CEO using a similar archetype to build a totally devoted team. And this right here illustrates exactly why this matters today. Think about an influencer you follow who never reveals their full story,
who speaks in that calm, measured tone, and whose whole vibe is just completely unique. They are using these ancient siren tactics, creating fantasy, creating mystery, to command our attention in a modern economy where our focus is the ultimate currency.
So this kind of leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? We've seen how these tactics work, how they bypass logic and target our emotions. So where do we draw the line between masterful influence and, well, toxic manipulation? And maybe more importantly, in a world that's saturated with these tactics, how do we stay aware of their power?
Today, we're going to deconstruct one of the most powerful and, let's be honest, most manipulative archetypes in the art of seduction. We're talking about a character who has absolutely mastered the art of making someone feel that they are the only person in the entire world. And they do it all with the power of attention. But seriously, just think about that for a second. In our world right now, with phones buzzing and a million things pulling at our focus, when was the last time someone gave you their complete, 100% undivided attention? It's incredibly rare, right? And that rarity, well, that's exactly what makes it so potent.
But what if I told you that this simple act isn't always what it seems? That for some people, it's a perfectly crafted illusion, a highly refined skill that's designed for one main purpose, to seduce and to influence.
In the source material, The Art of Seduction, this archetype is given a very specific name, the rake. And believe me, according to the text, their power is legendary. So how in the world does the rake do it? Well, their secret isn't about their looks or how much money they have. Nope. It's all about psychology. They tap into a really deep, fundamental human need, a kind of repressed longing that often goes totally unmet in our modern relationships. And this quote from the source just hits the nail on the head. The rake's power comes from fulfilling this intense desire to feel completely and utterly wanted. It transforms them into this ultimate fantasy figure, even if it's only for a little while. So, here's the most crucial point to get. The rake isn't just a good listener. They are a master illusionist. They create what the source calls an artificial intensity, making their target feel like the absolute center of the universe.
All right, so how do they actually build this illusion? Let's break down the specific, almost surgical techniques that the rake uses. This is their toolkit for crafting that incredible artificial intensity.
And this lays out their method perfectly. First up, intense focus. The phone is gone, the world just melts away. Then you have dramatic reaction. They don't just listen, they perform listening with these world-class expressions. Next is total recall. They remember that tiny little detail you mentioned a week ago, which makes you feel so incredibly seen. And finally, constant validation. These little phrases like, "That's so interesting," are dropped in like clockwork every 30 to 40 seconds. And behind all of these clever techniques, there is one single overriding goal. Every action, every word, every single glance is engineered for one thing: to make their target feel uniquely and profoundly special.
So now that we know what they do, let's dig into why it is so devastatingly effective. This is where we get into the real psychology and even the brain chemistry of seduction.
You see, the first thing that happens is a shock to the system. Getting 100% focused attention is so unusual for us that the target's brain is, well, literally jolted. It's a complete pattern interrupt that it just doesn't know how to handle at first. And that initial shock kicks off a powerful chain reaction. All that constant validation, it acts like a drug. It delivers a little dopamine hit that the brain's reward system gets hooked on, and fast. As that addiction takes hold, the brain's higher-level defenses, its critical thinking, they just start to drop. The target becomes blinded, seeing only the rake's good qualities and completely ignoring all the red flags and flaws.
But the manipulation doesn't actually stop there. And this is where things get even more counterintuitive. You'd think a reputation for being disloyal would be a major turnoff, right? Well, for the rake, it's often the exact opposite.
The rake just thrives on this seductive mix of danger and pleasure. Being seen as slightly forbidden, maybe a bit of a challenge, it only makes them more appealing. The target knows the attention might not last, but the rake makes them believe that, for this one moment, they are the exception to the rule.
This old story of Don Juan is a perfect example. So, he seduces and then abandons a young woman named Cressida. Years later, he sees her again, but this time she looks rich, married, and totally out of his reach. All of a sudden, she's a forbidden fruit, and he becomes obsessed. But here's the kicker. It was all a prank she set up. because she knew the only way to get his attention again was to become a challenge he couldn't resist.
Now don't think for a second these techniques are just for romance. The rake archetype is an incredibly powerful tool for influence in so many other parts of life.
For instance, just take a look at how this applies in a professional setting. Charismatic CEOs often use these exact same tactics to build fiercely devoted teams. They give intense focus, they remember small details about their employees, and they offer constant validation. The end goal is different. It's loyalty instead of romance, but the core principle is identical. Make the target feel special.
And that leaves us with a really fascinating and maybe even an unsettling final question. When the techniques of intense focus and validation are this powerful, what really separates genuine charisma from calculated manipulation? Where do you draw that line?
Have you ever just wanted to escape? You know, that feeling of being stuck in the daily grind, work, eat, sleep, and do it all over again. We've all been there. It's totally human. And today, we're going to dive into how one specific archetype, the star, has mastered the art of tapping into that exact desire.
I mean, let's just be real for a second. For most people, life isn't some non-stop adventure. It's full of routines, challenges, and yeah, a whole lot of boredom. And that creates this little psychological void inside us, a space we're just itching to fill with something more.
So, what do? We escape. We get lost in daydreams, binge-watch shows, scroll through feeds. Anything to get a little relief from the ordinary. And this right here? This is the perfect setup for someone who can offer a fantasy that feels, well, real.
So, what if a person could literally step out of that daydream and into your world? Someone who embodies everything that's fascinating, exciting, and extraordinary. That right there is the incredible power of the seductive archetype we call the star.
Okay, so what actually makes someone a star? And spoiler alert, it's not just about being famous or having perfect looks. No, it's a carefully built psychological illusion. So let's break down the anatomy of how it all works.
At its heart, the star is an object of fascination. They know we want to escape, so they project this image that's both dazzling and, crucially, just a little bit out of reach. They don't just grab our attention, they completely hijack our imagination.
So how do they pull it off? Well, their technique really boils down to 3 key things. First, they have to stand out. They develop this unique style that makes them look anything but ordinary. Second, they keep their distance. They stay a little vague, a little mysterious, which makes us fill in the blanks with our own fantasies. And finally, they project this dreamlike quality that lets us, just for a moment, forget about our own boring lives. Now, that all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in practice? Let's take a look at a real historical figure who absolutely mastered this art of becoming an object of desire, and she turned a simple idea into an incredible tool of influence.
To really get this, you have to understand one fundamental rule of human psychology. We are wired to want what other people want. It's true. When we see that something or someone is in high demand, our own desire for it just goes through the roof. It's like a mental shortcut that screams, "This is valuable."
Okay, so meet Luan Salome. Back in the late 19th century, she was this total magnetic force in all the big intellectual circles. And it wasn't just that she was brilliant and beautiful, she was an absolute pro at the stars technique, even though she probably didn't call it that.
And this is where it gets really juicy. A philosopher named Paul Ree was head over heels for Salome. So she asks him to introduce her to his friend, the famous, and I mean famous, Friedrich Nietzsche. And you can probably guess what happened next. Nietzsche was totally captivated by her too.
And right there, that's step 1, standing out in real time. By putting herself in the middle of this triangle of desire, Salome wasn't just another smart person in the room. She was the person that 2 of the greatest minds of the time were fighting over. The competition itself made her seem extraordinary and just cramped her appeal up to 11. And that effect is what created her legend. Her reputation just snowballed, perfectly hitting steps 2 and 3, that ethereal distance and dreamlike quality. People were desperate to be near her, but she always remained a bit of an enigma. I mean, decades later, even Sigmund Freud fell under her spell. It just goes to show her mystique was timeless. She basically became a living fantasy. So what's the psychological engine that was making all of this work? Salome's story is a perfect case study in a super powerful concept called social proof. But first, let's just bust a huge myth. You might think that all this seduction and influence stuff is mostly about physical appearance, right? Wrong. Turns out looks only account for about 10 to 15% of the whole effect. That's it.
The real game, the place where all the power lies, is in the mind. You know, the most successful seducers in history, they weren't always the best-looking people in the room. They were masters of human psychology. And that brings us to the core mechanism, social proof. It's basically our brain's tendency to follow the herd. You see a long line outside a restaurant, you automatically assume the food must be amazing. Salome essentially turned herself into that restaurant with the line around the block. And that's exactly how the star operates. They don't just sit around and wait for people to desire them. They manufacture that desire. They create this aura of being wanted, which triggers our deep-seated instinct to want what everyone else values. I mean, think about it. This is happening all around us, right now. From celebrities whose value is literally measured in followers, to that new gadget that sells out just because of the hype. The game hasn't changed one bit, only the players have. So, at the end of the day, the power of the star isn't about being perfect. It's not about meeting some impossible standard. It's about mastering the art of being wanted. It's never about who you actually are. It's about who everyone believes you to be. Have you ever met one of those people? You know, someone who walks into a room and, without even trying, just has everyone's attention? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain on that magnetic quality. We're going to break down one of the most powerful psychological archetypes out there, the charismatic.
All right, let's kick things off with a number that might actually surprise you. According to the experts, our physical appearance, our looks, that only accounts for about 15% of attraction and influence. Just 15. Which, of course, raises the big question, right? If it's not mostly about looks, then what in the world makes up the other massive 85%? What's the real secret sauce?
Well, the answer is almost entirely psychological. It's all about these powerful, deeply ingrained patterns of behavior that we all instinctively recognize. You might have heard of them before. They're called archetypes.
And of all these powerful patterns, today we're diving into one of the most magnetic, one of the most effective of them all. We're explaining the archetype of the charismatic.
So, the very first thing you need to understand is that a charismatic's power isn't an act. It's not a technique they've memorized. It's something that radiates from a really powerful inner core. The sources we looked at put it perfectly. It's a presence that comes from within. It's the outward projection of qualities that, deep down, other people wish they had for themselves. And that right there is what makes the charismatic seem so extraordinary. Okay, so what actually fuels this inner fire? Well, it really boils down to 4 fundamental pillars. And we're going to look at each one because this is where the real secret is. First, and this is probably the cornerstone of the whole thing, is a deep, authentic self-confidence. Now, we're not talking about arrogance. This is a genuine belief in themselves that is so solid, it makes them seem like they're above all the petty anxieties and insecurities that get to the rest of us. Second is something the source calls a natural sexual energy. And let's be clear, this isn't just about physical attraction. Think of it more like a passion for life itself, a vitality that makes them seem so vibrant, so fully alive, and just incredibly compelling to be around. Third up, a powerful sense of purpose. Charismatics have a clear direction. They know where they're going, and that certainty gives everything they do a sense of weight and conviction. It makes them seem focused, almost like they're destined for something amazing, and people just want to be a part of that journey. And finally, and this one is absolutely crucial, is inner contentment. Charismatics are self-sufficient. They don't need validation or approval from anyone else. This lack of neediness is incredibly attractive because it makes them a source of strength, not somebody who's going to drain yours.
Okay, so they have this powerful inner core. But how do charismatics consciously crank up the volume on this stuff? How do they draw people in even further?
This is where it gets really, really interesting. They master a fascinating contradiction. On one hand, they can radiate this intense, piercing focus. When they're with you, you feel like the only person in the world. But at the same time, they project this sense of detachment, like they're always holding a little something back.
And this push and pull is what does it. The intensity and the detachment. It creates this irresistible mystery. It makes them seem deep and complex, and it just draws people in. You feel like you have to solve the puzzle of who they really are.
Now, this kind of psychological influence isn't just theory.
History is absolutely filled with examples of its immense and sometimes its very dangerous power.
Let's take a look at a story from ancient China. It's about a man named King Fu Chai and a woman named Shishir, who was presented to him as a gift.
But here's the catch. Shishir wasn't just any woman. She had been secretly trained for 3 years specifically to seduce and control the king. And her captivating presence worked. I mean, it worked so well that he became completely obsessed, ignoring his advisors, abandoning his duties, and eventually spending the entire kingdom's treasury on her whims.
And this obsession, totally fueled by her powerful and carefully crafted allure, led directly to his downfall. His kingdom was conquered, and he ultimately lost his life. It's a pretty stark warning of how this kind of influence can be utterly destructive when it's taken to the extreme.
So we've explored the foundation, the technique, and even the potential consequences. So what's the most crucial point we should take away from all of this?
Here it is, the key takeaway. Charisma is not about learning a few lines or faking an attitude. It's the carefully managed projection of genuine inner qualities. It's an illusion, sure, but it's an illusion that has to be built on a foundation of real strength.
And so this all leaves us with one final big question. If these core qualities, confidence, purpose, contentment, are the true source of this power, can anyone learn to cultivate them? Or is true charisma an innate gift you're simply born with? What do you think?
All right, today we're going to break down a master of psychological influence. We're talking about someone who can win you over before you even realize what's happening. Let's dive into the world of the charmer.
Seriously, think about it. You know that person, right? The one who just gets you, who listens so closely you feel like you're the only person in the room. That feeling, it is absolutely not an accident. It's a strategy.
So what's this number all about? You might be surprised. This is the percentage that experts say physical appearance actually contributes to attraction. We tend to think looks are the whole game, but they're really only about 10 to 15% of the picture.
Yep, the other 85–90%, it's all happening right up here, in the mind. The most legendary figures in history, they understood this perfectly. It was never about being the best-looking person in the room. It was about mastering the laws of human psychology.
So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to decode one of the sneakiest, most effective psychological players out there, the charmer. We'll look at how they operate, what makes them so powerful, and how they tap into our deepest needs. Okay, first up, the profile. Let's figure out what actually makes a charmer tick. And it's really important to get this. They aren't just nice or friendly. Their entire approach is a calculated, subtle art form.
And this is the absolute key, right here. Their whole game is what you might call seduction without sex. It's not about the physical stuff. It's all about creating this powerful psychological connection. They do it by making you feel completely, totally comfortable.
And that's what makes them so incredibly good and so hard to see coming. You never feel like you're being played because, well, the entire experience just feels so good. They hide what they're doing behind this perfect mask of warmth and understanding.
So what's their secret weapon? How do they actually cast this spell? Well, it boils down to a really simple but crazy effective 3-step process.
Okay, let's walk through this. Step 1, they deflect attention. They never boast or talk about themselves. It's always about you. Step 2, they laser focus on you. They just tune right into your moods, your feelings, your problems. And then step 3, and this is the kill shot, they target your weakness. And what's our biggest universal weakness? Our deep need to feel important, to feel validated.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? In the presence of a charmer, you feel better about yourself. See? It's not about how awesome they are. It's about how awesome they make you feel. By feeding your vanity, they get you to lower all your defenses, and before you know it, you're drawn to them.
All right, to really get why the charmer is in a league of their own, we've got to compare their style to some other, well, more aggressive tactics of influence. Because, let's be real, not all manipulation feels this nice.
You can see the huge difference right here. On one side, you have the charmer's method. Comfort, validation, pleasure. They build you up. But on the other side, you've got tactics that create chaos, isolation, and temptation. These methods, they're designed to break you down. Let's look at a couple of examples of that.
Take this story from ancient China.
The whole point here wasn't to make the king feel good about himself. Nope. The goal was to isolate him, to cut him off from his friends, his duties, his whole support system. By becoming his entire world, this woman, Shishir, made him weak and totally dependent. It's a power play based on creating need, not security. Or how about the classic seducer, Don Juan? His whole thing was creating temptation. He'd only get interested in someone when they became forbidden fruit, a challenge he just had to conquer. This is all about manufacturing a problem, an obstacle, which is the total opposite of what a charmer does. They want everything to feel easy and pleasant. So here's the bottom line. The key difference is the feeling. A charmer makes you feel secure, important, just good. These other tactics, they're designed to make you feel off balance, maybe even a little desperate. It's night and day. And that brings us to the real heart of it all, the power of being seen. Why is the charmer's method so dang effective? It's because it's not just some clever trick. It's tapping into something incredibly deep within all of us. I mean, think about it. We live in a world where almost everyone is wrapped up in their own stuff, right? Their own problems, their own lives. So when someone comes along and gives you their complete, undivided attention, man, that is powerful. It's rare. The charmer gives you that, and in doing so, they scratch an itch we all have, the deep, deep need to feel truly seen and understood.
So I'll leave you with this question. Now that you know the playbook, who does this remind you of? Maybe someone in your life? Someone in the news? A character from a movie? Because I guarantee you, once you see this pattern, you'll start seeing it everywhere. And understanding it, well, that's the first step to seeing the invisible currents of influence that are all around us.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a true master of psychological manipulation, the ideal lover. This is a character type that's, well, it's as fascinating as it is seriously dangerous.
Okay, let's start with a question. What if you met someone who seemed to be the living, breathing embodiment of your wildest fantasies? Would you think it's destiny, or could it be a calculated design?
Well, that's the ideal lover for you. This isn't just someone who's attractive. They are meticulously building an illusion that you just can't resist. Think of them as psychological chameleons, shaping themselves into your absolute perfect match, all while their true self stays completely hidden.
And let's be crystal clear, this is not just charming persuasion. As some sources put it, this archetype is often described as the most manipulative and dark of them all. This isn't about mutual attraction. It's a cold, calculated game of psychological control.
So how in the world did they pull this off? Well, their number one weapon is a universal human experience: disappointment.
I mean, think about it. As we go through life, a lot of our youthful dreams, that epic romance, thrilling adventures, or just that deep feeling of being understood, they can get kind of worn down by reality. That lingering sense of what if becomes this quiet vulnerability inside all of us.
And that is their way in. See, they aren't interested in your strengths. They're hunting for the ghosts of your unfulfilled desires. They find that empty space in your life and promise to fill it, absolutely perfectly. They become a perfect mirror for whatever it is you feel is missing. So, if you're longing for romance, they become a poet. If you're craving adventure, boom, they're an explorer. They are true artists, painting the exact picture you've secretly been dying to see your whole life. Now, this isn't just some kind of gut feeling or intuition, it's a method, a literal playbook for deception. Let's break down exactly how it works.
There's this 4-step playbook that the ideal lover follows to engineer this so-called perfect connection. It's a really calculated strategy, and it's designed to bypass all your rational defenses and go straight for your deepest emotional needs.
So, it all starts with reconnaissance. This is what some call deep psychological profiling. They're not just getting to know you, they are gathering data, everything from your taste in music to the captions on your social media posts, to build a perfect model of what you want. And once they have all that data, they start to mirror you. You casually mention you're into punk rock, bam. Suddenly they're an expert on the 77 scene. They literally become a flawless reflection, and they'll maintain completely different personas for you, for their colleagues, and even for their friends. The result is this thing called artificial compatibility. And let me tell you, our brains are just wired to love that feeling of being perfectly understood. It's so potent, so addictive, that it creates this huge contrast. Next to them, everyone else in your life just starts to feel bland, ordinary. And here's the masterstroke. This isn't just a one-on-one game.
They cement their position by winning over your inner circle, by charming your friends and your family. They get the ultimate external validation. It makes their illusion almost impossible to question.
But listen, these tactics aren't just for romance. The ideal lover archetype is an incredibly powerful tool for influence in the professional world too.
The principles are exactly the same, just with a different end goal. A salesperson might mirror a client's professional goals to build trust. Instead of creating emotional dependence, they create a sense of professional necessity. The underlying trick, mirroring to build artificial compatibility, is identical.
The strategy is the same right across the board. Make the other person feel perfectly seen and understood so you can control the outcome. It's a tool for building empires, for growing huge online followings, and yeah, for closing deals.
So why does all this matter? Well, understanding this playbook isn't about learning how to manipulate people. It's about learning to recognize when it might be happening to you.
At its very core, this whole archetype works so well because it taps into one of our most fundamental human needs, the desire to just be truly seen. They offer this powerful antidote to all those quiet disappointments we carry around, and that's exactly what makes the illusion so incredibly tempting.
And that leaves us with one final, crucial question you have to ask yourself. The next time you feel a connection that seems almost too good to be true, just pause and consider, have you found your perfect match? Or are you just staring into a perfect illusion?
Okay, let's dive into one of the most counterintuitive and, honestly, powerful archetypes in the art of seduction. We're going to explore how the simplest approach can sometimes be the most devastatingly effective. All right, when you think of a master seducer, what's the first image that pops into your head? Is it someone dramatic, complex, and wrapped in mystery?
You know, maybe you're thinking of the siren, this figure of ultimate fantasy. They have that powerful, alluringly distant vibe that just pulls you into their world.
Or hey, maybe your mind goes to the rake, who offers that thrilling mix of danger and pleasure. Think of historical figures like the infamous Don Juan, that classic forbidden fruit reputation that makes them a challenge to be conquered. So you see the pattern here, right? These classic types, they all operate in this world of heightened drama, danger, and really elaborate games. They build up tension and promise an escape through sheer intensity. But what if there's another way? So instead of all that complexity, what if the real power, the real secret, lies in the exact opposite? What if true magnetism comes from offering joy and simplicity, especially in a world that's become way too calculated? And that right there, that brings us to a really deep psychological truth. A lot of us are basically trying to recapture something we've lost. The pressures of being an adult often leave us really yearning for a simpler time. Think about it. As adults, life gets, well, complicated. It's calculated, it's strategic, and honestly, it can be pretty disappointing. We build up all these defenses and we lose that sense of spontaneous joy. So deep down, we're all kind of craving a return to that golden paradise of our youth.
And here's the kicker. Someone who can actually offer a return to that feeling, that sense of freedom and authenticity, they hold an incredible amount of power. They're tapping into this universal desire that, honestly, most people don't even know they have.
So how does this all translate into an actual seductive archetype? Well, let's break down the anatomy of the natural, the one who perfectly embodies that lost childhood spirit. Okay, so according to the source material, the natural is the living, breathing embodiment of all those childhood qualities we just talked about. Their whole goal isn't to create drama, it's to completely dissolve it. Their power really comes down to three key things that just completely disarm us: spontaneity, sincerity, and unpretentiousness. I mean, in a world where everyone's wearing a mask and has an agenda, these aren't just personality quirks, they're basically strategic weapons. Now, what's so fascinating here is the effect it describes. It's not just attraction, it's this feeling of helpless delight. I love that phrase. The natural makes people feel so incredibly at ease that they drop their guard, and they do it willingly. Okay, so you might be thinking, how does this actually work in the real world, especially in these high-stakes environments where everyone is super defensive and calculating? How on earth does simplicity beat complexity? Well, it's pretty brilliant, actually. Instead of playing the same old game of power and calculation, the natural just stands out. They refuse to play at all. So, in a royal court full of suspicion, their directness comes off as refreshingly honest. In the cutthroat art world packed with egos, their total lack of self-importance is just unbelievably charming. See, they win by being completely different. And this right here, this is their masterstroke. It's the appearance of being completely transparent. It makes everyone else believe they couldn't possibly have an ulterior motive. You know, you think to yourself, someone this open, this sincere, there's no way they're manipulating me. And that, right there, is precisely when you're most vulnerable. And this brings us to a really key point from one of the sources. Get this. Physical appearance might only account for something like 10 to 15% of attraction. The rest? It's all psychology. The Naturals is the ultimate proof of this. A well-crafted persona that taps into our deepest psychological needs is just so much more powerful than conventional good looks.
But this is where the whole archetype gets really complex and, frankly, a little bit unsettling. We really have to ask ourselves, is this genuine, authentic charm, or is it something else entirely? Pay very close attention to the wording here, because it's taken directly from the source. It doesn't say be a natural. It says adopt the pose of one. That one little word, pose, it changes absolutely everything. It suggests this whole thing can just be a performance, a very deliberate strategy. So you see, it's not really about being childlike. It's about projecting a childlike quality to achieve a very adult goal. It's an absolutely masterful psychological trick. By tapping into that universal longing for lost youth, the Natural completely neutralizes your defenses. They make you feel safe, they make you feel seen and accepted, and it's in that exact moment of comfort that you willingly, happily let your guard down. So, I'm gonna leave you with this question to chew on. Is the Natural the most authentic form of charm you could ever encounter? Or is it actually the most brilliant performance of all? A manipulation so perfect that it feels more real than reality itself. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What's the real difference between being genuinely simple and simply being a master of appearing that way? You know, when we think about seduction, our minds usually jump to things like good looks or, a charming personality. But what if the most powerful kind of seduction isn't about that at all? What if it's really a psychological game, a delicate dance of push and pull? Well, we're gonna dive into that idea by looking at one of the most compelling archetypes out there. So check this out. On one side of our story, you've got Don Juan. I mean, the Don Juan, right? The legendary seducer who had thousands of conquests. And on the other side, we have Cressida. She was a poor orphan. He slept with her and then completely forgot she even existed. But here's the twist. Years down the line, he becomes absolutely obsessed with her. The master player suddenly found himself getting played. So that's the big question, right? How in the world did she do it? How does someone who was completely forgotten suddenly flip the script and gain all the power over a master of seduction? Well, it wasn't some kind of magic spell, it was a strategy. A really clever one, actually, that taps into something deep and primal inside all of us. And the answer, the secret to her strategy, lies in an archetype called the coquette. Now, coquettes are basically masters of delayed satisfaction. They just get it. They understand that the thing we can't quite have, well, that's almost always the thing we end up wanting the most. The whole point here is to hold the target in thrall. That's a great way to put it. It means they're completely captivated, just waiting. See, the coquette's real power isn't about giving you what you want. Nope, it's about dangling the promise of what you want just out of your reach. And somehow, that promise becomes way more powerful than the actual prize ever could be. Okay, so how does this actually work? In practice, the strategy is this constant psychological push and pull. Think of it like turning a dial between heat and coolness. You give them a little bit of heat, a glimmer of hope, right? And just when they lean in, you pull back and give them coolness. You create frustration. It's that emotional roller coaster that gets people absolutely hooked. You can really boil this whole thing down to a simple 3-step process. Step 1, the bait. You throw out a little hope, the promise of something good. Step 2, the pullback. Suddenly, that reward is just gone. It's elusive. And the result? Step 3, the target is held in thrall, totally obsessed with the chase. All right, so let's circle back to our story about Don Juan and Cressida.
I mean, theory is great and all, but seeing this stuff play out in the real world, that's where it gets really interesting. And believe me, what Crocetta did is basically a masterclass in the coquette strategy. Okay, just look at this timeline of her moves. It's brilliant. So years after he just dumps her, he spots her again. But she's totally transformed. She looks elegant, rich, and she's married. Bam, that's the bait, that's the hope. But of course, when he tries to talk to her, she just shuts him down flat, tells him it's forbidden. That's the pullback, that's the frustration. And what happens? He becomes obsessed. We're talking countless sleepless nights. Then she hits him with this insane challenge and, right at the end, pulls the rug out from under him, revealing the whole thing was a prank just to make herself desirable again. It's just masterful stuff. So what's the big takeaway here? It's that Crocetta knew her target inside and out. For a guy like Don Juan, who could literally have anyone he wanted, the only thing that had any real value was the one thing he couldn't have. She basically weaponized the idea of scarcity. By making herself totally inaccessible, her value in his eyes just went through the roof. And this really gets to the core of the whole thing. There's this great quote that says, "People are perversely excited about what they cannot or should not have." And isn't that true? There's just a thrill in the chase, you know? The excitement of trying to overcome an obstacle. This chart really lays it all out. The heat, that was her new high-status life. It got him curious, made him desire her again. The coolness, that was the barrier she put up, declaring herself forbidden fruit. And his reaction? He became totally obsessed and depressed. Then comes the challenge, the crazy public task. That's what sparked that perverse excitement we were just talking about. You can see how every single one of her actions was designed to get a very specific reaction from him. But wait, here comes the final, absolute genius move. Even after her prank is revealed, after he's completely hooked and actually begs her to marry him, she says no. Why would she do that? Because she's smart. She knows that the second the chase is over, the second he feels like he's won her, his interest is going to vanish. By refusing, she keeps the game going forever, and she stays in complete control. So let's zoom out from this one crazy story for a minute and look at the bigger picture, the psychology of desire. Why is the chase so powerful? What is it about this strategy that works so well on us? It really taps into some fundamental parts of who we are. So why does this work so well? First off, it turns romance into a game, a challenge. And let's be honest, we are wired to want what we have to work for, what we have to earn. This strategy totally exploits our desire for anything that's elusive or forbidden. It creates this thrilling, almost addictive cycle of tension and release. And through it all, the coquette stays in the driver's seat, holding all the power. So, if there's one thing to really take away from all this, it's this. The coquette's power doesn't come from giving satisfaction. It comes from promising it and then artfully pulling it away. It's all about managing desire. It's the promise, the potential, that what-if feeling. That's where the real magnetic pull comes from. And that leaves us with a pretty interesting question to chew on, doesn't it? When it comes to attraction, is it possible the secret isn't actually about the prize at all, but about the chase?
What if I told you there's a key to being completely, utterly free? I'm not talking about money or power. I'm talking about a kind of psychological freedom. Today, we're diving deep into an archetype from the world of attraction that represents exactly that. A figure who doesn't just break the rules, they live as if the rules were never written for them in the first place.
I mean, really think about it. You know that feeling, right? That little voice in your head that says you're being, well, boxed in. Maybe it's at work where you have to be the professional, or with family where you're the responsible one. It's like we're all handed these scripts at birth and we're just expected to read our lines. But what happens when you start to feel like the script itself is the problem? What if you want to write your own?
So let's give that feeling a name. We can call it the social cage. It's this invisible structure of expectations that surrounds us. And understanding this cage is the first step to understanding the incredible power of the archetype we're about to meet.
Yeah, most of us really do feel stuck. We follow the path, right? Go to school, get the job, find the partner, follow the unspoken rules. We become predictable. And there's a certain comfort in that, for sure. But there's also a cost. A part of us gets filed away, suppressed. We follow the script because honestly, it feels like there's no other choice. It feels safer than the terrifying open space of true freedom.
Okay, so before we introduce our grand escape artist, let's just quickly nail down this word archetype. It sounds academic, but it's actually pretty simple. Think of archetypes as the original character templates that live inside our collective human consciousness. You know, like the hero, the mentor, the trickster. They're universal patterns that tap into something deep and shared within all of us.
And that brings us to the main event. We've talked about the cage, that feeling of being trapped. Now, let's talk about the one who holds the key. The one who doesn't just bend the bars, but seems to stroll right through them as if they were never there. It's time to meet the dandy.
The dandy is absolutely mesmerizing because they are a walking, talking symbol of liberation. Look around you. Most people are trying so hard to fit in. The dandy, on the other hand, puts all their energy into standing out. They don't just ignore the rules of the social game, they've invented a completely different game, and they're the only one who knows how to play. That level of self-authorship, it's incredibly alluring.
And this right here, this is the secret sauce to their power. Deep down, almost everyone has a secret fantasy of just dropping the act, of saying what you really think, wearing what you really want, and being who you truly are without fear of judgment. The dandy actually does it. They live out that fantasy for us, and when we see them, we see a flicker of our own repressed desire for freedom. They make it look not just possible, but beautiful.
This chart really nails the difference. On one side, you have society's roles. They're predefined, like picking a character in a video game that someone else designed. They're restrictive, they're predictable, you know exactly what you're getting. Boring, right? Then you look at the dandy's persona. It's totally self-created from the ground up. It's fluid, constantly shifting, and most importantly, it's ambiguous. You can't put a label on them. And in a world that loves labels, being uncategorizable is a superpower.
All right, so you might be thinking, this sounds amazing, but how? How do they actually pull this off? It's not magic, and it's definitely not accidental. There is a method to their captivating madness, a very deliberate and artful strategy for creating this aura of absolute freedom.
Let's pull back the curtain on their playbook. It really boils down to 3 core steps. First, they craft a visual presence that you literally cannot ignore. It's designed to startle. Second, they don't just tolerate ambiguity, they embrace it as a primary tool. And third, they use that startling, ambiguous presence to awaken desires that most people keep locked down tight. So, step 1, the image. We're not just talking about being well-dressed here. This goes way beyond fashion. A dandy's look is a piece of performance art. They don't follow trends, they create a personal aesthetic that is entirely their own. It's a visual declaration that says, I am not one of you, I am something different. This startling image is their opening move, the thing that immediately separates them from the sea of conformity. Now for step 2, and this one is crucial, ambiguity. They deliberately blur the lines. By mixing traditionally masculine and feminine signals, whether in their clothes, their attitude, or their interests, they short-circuit our brain's need to categorize. You look at them, and you can't just slap a simple label on them. That forces you to pay attention, to wonder, to be intrigued. That mystery, that's where the allure really takes hold.
And here we are, at the final and most profound step. By being so unapologetically different, by embodying the unconventional, the dandy acts like a permission slip for the rest of us. They tap into all the what-ifs we've buried. What if I pursued my art? What if I dressed how I really wanted? They represent the road not taken, and in doing so, they connect with a deep, often unspoken part of us that yearns for a life with fewer rules and more authenticity. So this might sound like some character from a 19th century novel, but I promise you, this archetype is more alive and more relevant today than ever before. Why? Because the social cage hasn't disappeared. If anything, with social media and constant comparison, its bars have just gotten stronger and more polished. And our desire for freedom? That's timeless. So what does this look like in our world? A modern dandy would be that person who has a completely signature look. You see it, you instantly know it's them. They're not chasing trends on TikTok, they're setting a standard of one. They would also confidently play with gender expression, challenging our assumptions about what it means to be masculine or feminine. But most of all, you'd feel this intense aura of self-possession around them. They move through the world as if they don't need anyone's approval, because they've already given it to themselves. And that's really the heart of it all. The dandy's ultimate powers isn't about attracting a partner, though that often happens. It's about embodying the most seductive idea of all, the idea of complete self-creation. They are a living, breathing testament to the fact that you do not have to accept the script you've been handed. You can, in fact, pick up a pen and write a whole new story for yourself.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a question, and not just a passing thought, but something to really sit with. The dandy teaches us that so many of the rules that dictate our lives are, well, they're imaginary. So ask yourself honestly, if you could break just one of those rules, just one expectation that society has placed on you, with absolutely no consequences, which one would it be? And what's stopping you?
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into a concept that is quietly running in the background of our lives, shaping everything from our relationships to our careers. We're talking about the psychological opposite of charisma, the absolute blueprint for repulsion, the anti-seducer. You might be surprised, but the answer is a mastery of seduction. And look, when I say seduction, I need you to get the whole romance idea out of your head. We're talking about something way bigger, the fundamental power to draw people towards you, towards your ideas, and towards your vision.
So, here's our game plan for today. We're going to start by redefining what this whole game of influence is really about. Then, we'll meet the one character you never ever want to be, the anti-seducer. We'll break down their fatal flaws, watch them crash and burn in a couple of scenarios, and then we're going to turn the mirror around and see why this is so important for all of us.
Okay, so to really get a handle on the anti-seducer, we have to start by expanding our idea of seduction. Seriously, forget the cliches. This is all about the deep, psychological wiring that makes us follow certain people, trust them, and want to connect with them. Think about it. The ability to attract and hold someone's attention is basically a superpower in almost every important part of life. It doesn't matter if we're talking about our love lives, building a loyal following online, or climbing the ladder at work, the same basic principles are always in play.
And get this is a huge takeaway from the source material. You'd think this is all about physical appearance, right? Well, nope. Looks only account for about 10 to 15% of the whole game. The rest of it, it's pure psychology. Why? Because true influence isn't about what people see, it's about connecting with what they feel is missing in their lives.
You know, sometimes the best way to understand what makes someone so magnetic is to study the complete opposite. We have to look at the ultimate blueprint for what just fails. And that, my friends, brings us to the anti-seducer.
Here's a simple way to think about it. A successful seducer is like a detective. They figure out a void in someone's life, maybe a need for adventure, or attention, or just feeling understood, and they fill it. The anti-seducer? Well, they embody every single quality that makes that kind of connection totally impossible. They are walking, talking, repellent.
This quote right here, this is the absolute heart of the problem. It all boils down to a total failure of perspective. It's like the anti-seducer is living in a room full of mirrors, only ever seeing themselves. And because of that, they push people away, often without even realizing they're doing it. So, what does this actually look like in practice? Let's break down the 3 fatal psychological flaws that pretty much define every anti-seducer. This is kind of like the masterclass in what not to do. Okay, so it all starts with deep insecurity. That insecurity then spirals into complete and total self-absorption. Because they're so focused inward, they become completely blind to the psychology of other people, which leads to the final nail in the coffin, imposing behavior. You know the type. They talk way too much, they're always pestering you, and they have zero self-awareness about the negative vibe they're putting out. And that's really the bottom line, isn't it? Because they're so wrapped up in themselves and so unaware, any time you spend with an anti-seducer just feels like work. It's draining. It's a one-way street, and there's absolutely nothing in it for you. All right, enough with the theory. Let's make this really concrete. What actually happens when these repellent traits show up in the real world? We're going to walk through a couple of high-stakes scenarios. First up, scenario 1, the political rally. So, picture someone on a stage trying to win the hearts and minds of a massive crowd. This is a classic test of influence.
So the effective leader, the seducer, makes it all about the crowd. They tap into their hopes and fears and give them a cause to rally behind. But the anti-seducer? Oh boy. They get up there and it's all me, me, me. They go on and on about their own struggles, their boring plans, and they are completely tone-deaf to the energy of the room. The result? People tune out. They feel disconnected. You can't build loyalty that way. It's impossible.
Okay, let's switch gears. Scenario 2 takes us into the professional world. Imagine an employee trying to influence their powerful boss, or, if we go way back, a courtier trying to win favor with a king. And again, it all comes down to perspective.
The savvy person, the seducer, offers value. They figure out what makes their boss tick and make them feel seen and important. The anti-seducer just brings their own neediness to the table. They only talk about what they want, a promotion, more money, or just complaining. And like the quote says, there's no pleasure or profit in that for the boss. So what happens? They get pushed to the side. End of story.
So this is where this whole concept goes from being just an interesting idea to a really powerful tool. Because you know what? It's easy to spot these flaws in other people. We all know an anti-seducer. The real power comes when you turn that lens around and point it at yourself. This is where true influence actually begins, with some serious self-awareness. It's about having the guts to really look at your own behavior. You know, the subtle ways you might be a little self-absorbed or not truly listening, and then actually putting in the effort to change. And that's the real challenge to leave you with. The most powerful question isn't, who do I know that's an anti-seducer? It's, in what moments, in what ways am I the anti-seducer? Answering that question, honestly, is the single most important step toward becoming a more connected and a more influential person in every part of your life. So let's talk about a theory of attraction that's pretty controversial. It basically says that what you look like, yeah, that's probably the least interesting thing about you. It argues that seduction has almost nothing to do with your appearance and everything to do with psychology.
I mean, that's what we're all told to focus on, right? That initial spark, that first impression. It seems like it's all about what we see. But according to the theory we're digging in today, that's mostly a myth. Physical appearance is just a tiny piece of a much, much bigger psychological puzzle.
Look at that number. This theory claims that how you look only accounts for about 10 to 15% of what makes someone truly captivating. So what about the other 85 to 90%? Well, that's where it gets fascinating. That, my friends, is all a game of psychology.
To really get this, we need to understand the core concept, which is called the theory of lack, or victim theory. Now, I know what you're thinking. That word victim sounds pretty harsh, right? But in this context, it's not about weakness. Think of it more as a psychological archetype, something that describes a universal human feeling. Here's the key idea. A victim, in this sense, is simply someone with a void, a deep-down feeling that something essential is missing from their life. Maybe it's adventure, maybe it's feeling special, maybe it's just a real emotional connection. Seduction, then, is the art of figuring out what that void is and then filling it. And this quote just nails the whole method. People almost never come out and say, hey, I feel unrecognized and bored. No way. Instead, they signal it, unconsciously. It's in their body language, in the things they get really emotional about, both good and bad. The whole strategy is to read those subtle clues and see past the social mask everyone wears. It really all boils down to this one simple but incredibly powerful dynamic. Find the emptiness, and then become the one person who can make them feel whole. Suddenly, it's less about who you are and way more about who you can be for them. Okay, so if pretty much everyone has some kind of lack, how on earth do you identify it? Well, this theory breaks people down into a few common archetypes. We're going to walk through 5 of the big ones to see exactly how this works in practice. First up, we have a type called the lost limb. Just think of them as the disappointed. These are people who have been seriously hurt in the past. Maybe it was a terrible breakup or some other major life disappointment. And because of that, they've built these massive walls around their heart. And here's the fascinating contradiction. On the outside, they might seem super cynical, maybe even hateful towards the idea of love. But deep down, there's what the theory calls a sleeping lion, this powerful, hidden desire to feel that old passion and hope again. The key is to somehow get past all their defenses and wake that lion up.
Next, let's talk about the lost dreamer. These are often introverted folks who live inside these amazing, elaborate fantasy worlds they've built for themselves, usually inspired by books or shows or art. Their big lack is a profound disappointment with everyday life. I mean, reality is just messy, right? It never quite lives up to the perfect, epic worlds they've imagined. So what they're really searching for is someone who doesn't just get their fantasy, but who can actually help bring it to life. All right, our third archetype, the pampered kid. These are people who often grew up with a ton of privilege, maybe a lot of money. Every material thing they could ever want was just handed to them. You'd think they have it all. But their lack is huge. They absolutely hate being bored. A life with no real struggle has left them starving for a thrill, for something new, maybe even for a little bit of chaos.
They're drawn like a magnet to people who can give them a sense of excitement and danger that money could never, ever buy.
Now for a totally different type, the crushed star. These are people who, at one point, were the center of attention. Think of a former athlete, a popular kid in school, a one-time star, but now they've lost that spotlight.
Their lack is a deep hunger for the validation they used to get all the time. They might pretend they're over it, but secretly they crave being the center of the universe again. So, a person who can put them back in that spotlight, even for just a moment, can become completely irresistible. And finally, we have the novice. These are usually younger people, very emotional, still trying to figure out the world and who they are, and they often feel like no one their own age really gets them. What they're missing is a very specific mix of guidance and emotional intensity. They're looking for an older, more mature, almost parental figure who can offer them both discipline and wild, passionate emotion. Someone who can teach them about life while also keeping them safe in this kind of emotional dreamland.
Okay, so that's the theory and those are the archetypes. But does this stuff actually play out in the real world? Oh, you better believe it. Let's look at a couple of historical examples that show these tactics in full swing.
Now, this first example is pretty dark. In ancient China, King Fu Chai was targeted by a rival kingdom. They sent a woman named Shishir who was trained in seduction. The king's lack was probably a deep boredom with his royal duties, a need for an all-consuming passion. Shishir exploited this perfectly by becoming his entire world. She manipulated him into ignoring his advisors, his family, his duties, and once she had him totally isolated from his support system, he became completely dependent on her, and his kingdom didn't last long after that.
For a more psychological angle, think about Luz Salome, a woman who absolutely fascinated some of the greatest minds of her time, like the philosophers Nietzsche and Ray. What did she do? She masterfully created a love triangle, making these geniuses literally compete for her. This is a perfect example of social proof in action. People want what other people want. Her desirability went through the roof simply because she was desired by famous, brilliant men.
And this quote just explains the whole principle behind her power. The challenge, the competition, the feeling that she was this forbidden or highly coveted prize, that's a powerful psychological trigger. Let's be honest, the thing we can't easily have is often the thing we want the most.
So, why are we learning all this? Is the goal to become some kind of master manipulator? According to the source material, absolutely not. The real power isn't in using these tactics, but in recognizing them. It's all about developing psychological awareness.
The source material sums it all up with this really provocative phrase: be conscious, not nice. Now, the idea isn't to be a cruel person, it's to be conscious, to be aware of the psychological games that are always being played, to be aware of your own vulnerabilities, and to understand what might be driving those intense attractions you sometimes feel. In a way, it's a kind of psychological self-defense. And really, that's the ultimate takeaway here. This knowledge is like a new pair of glasses. When you look at history, or at pop culture, or maybe even at your own life, can you start to see these patterns playing out? The real power isn't in playing the game, it's just an understanding that a game is being played.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something, well, it's a little controversial. It's an idea from the art of seduction that flips everything you think you know about attraction on its head, because it suggests that what you see in the mirror, it barely matters. So let's just jump right in with a big question. We're all taught that attraction is about looks, right? How you dress, your face, your body. But what if that's just a tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle?
Because according to the sources we're looking at today, physical appearance, it's maybe 10-15% of the deal. The rest of it, the whole game, is all psychology, and that is what we're going to unpack.
Okay, so this brings us to the very first rule. And honestly, this is the most important one. It's kind of a big deal because it says your success has almost nothing to do with how charming you are or what lines you use. Nope, it's all decided before you even start. It all comes down to one thing: choosing the right victim. And yeah, the source material is super blunt about this. It says everything hangs on this one choice. The perfect person to influence, and yes, they use the provocative word victim, is someone who has this big empty space inside them, a void that you are uniquely positioned to fill. And this makes so much sense when you think about it, right? I mean, if someone is totally content, completely happy with their life, well, there's no way in. It's like a locked door.
There's no crack for you to get a foothold. The real opening, the vulnerability, it always comes from a place of dissatisfaction. So the big question is, how do you even spot this? How do you find the right person? Well, the strategy is all about becoming a kind of psychological detective, always looking for that hidden emptiness.
So, what is this void? Think of it as this deep, internal feeling that something's just missing, you know? It's this ache that makes people subconsciously look for something or someone to fill that gap and make them feel complete again.
And this void can look like a lot of different things. It might be a need for love and attention, someone who just feels totally unseen. Or maybe it's a desire for a little bit of adventure, someone who's just dying of boredom in their day-to-day life. It can even be a lost dream, you know, that thing they always wanted to do but never got the chance.
Here's the tricky part, though. People almost never just come out and say what's missing. They hide it. So the real skill is learning to look past the surface. You have to look beyond their smile, beyond what they're saying, and pay attention to what's really going on inside their skin.
And this is where it gets super specific and pretty fascinating. The sources we're looking at don't just leave it at find the void. Oh no, they actually break it down into 18 different types of people or victims, each defined by their own special kind of emptiness. So for example, you have the pampered kid. This is someone who seems to have it all, but they're secretly dying of boredom. They crave excitement. Then there's the crushed star, someone who used to be in the limelight and now they're not, and they are desperate for that attention again. See how it works? Once you know their specific void, you know exactly what they're looking for.
All right, so that's the theory, right? Find the void. But how does this actually work in practice? Let's get into the juicy stuff and look at 2 master strategies that show this law in action.
So you've got 2 main paths here. On one hand, there's social proof. That's all about making yourself seem like the person everyone wants. And on the other hand, you have isolation. This one's way more intense. It's about making yourself someone's entire world by cutting them off from their own.
Okay, let's start with strategy number 1, social proof. The idea here is simple. You become more attractive when other people already find you attractive.
And the perfect example of this is a woman named Lou Salome. She was an intellectual, and she was a master at this game. She chose to associate with these really high-profile, desirable men, like the famous philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. She basically created this love triangle on purpose, making these brilliant men compete for her. And what happened? Her own value just shot through the roof. It all comes down to a simple, powerful truth. People want what other people want. It's human nature. Salome's desirability went up because she was desired by others. She chose her victims strategically to create a buzz around her.
All right, let's switch gears to the second strategy. And this one is much darker, much more direct. We're talking about isolation. The entire goal is to cut your target off from everyone and everything else, so they have no one to turn to but you.
There's this incredible historical story about a King Fu Chai. His rival wanted to take him down, so he sent in a secret weapon, a woman named Shishir. Her only job was to seduce the king and, more importantly, isolate him. She started by demanding a huge, expensive palace. Then, she demanded all of his time. He started skipping meetings with his council, ignoring his duties, until he was completely cut off. Think about it. She pulled the rug out from under him piece by piece. She took away his power, his advisors, his purpose. And once he was totally alone and weak, who did he turn to? Her. The source puts it in really stark terms. An isolated person becomes vulnerable, and they'll cling to you for help like a child crying out for its mother. And that right there was the end of his kingdom. So, what does this all boil down to? What's the ultimate point? It's that choosing the right victim isn't just the first step. It's everything. It's the whole game. It's rule number 1, the first law. This single choice is the most important move you can make, period. And here's why it's so powerful. When you target someone with a pre-existing need, what you're doing doesn't feel like a strategy to them. It feels natural. It feels like you're the answer they've been looking for. You're not forcing anything. You're just filling an emptiness that was already there. So let's be super clear. If you get this initial choice wrong, it doesn't matter how clever or charming you are. It's not going to work. But if you get it right,
well, the seduction is almost complete before you've even really begun.
And think about it. This idea of the void goes way beyond just personal relationships. You see it everywhere, in advertising, in politics, and how brands talk to us. So, now that you know what to look for, I'll leave you with this question. Where do you see this dynamic playing out in the world around you?
We've all heard it, right? To get someone's attention, you should just be an open book. But what if that's kind of bad advice? What if a little bit of mystery, a little bit of confusion, is actually the key to grabbing someone's attention and not letting go? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
So think about it for a second. Is being totally transparent really the best way to go? I mean, we're taught to be upfront, be direct. But does that always work? Because, when someone is too predictable, too easy to read, doesn't it get a little boring? It's almost like their attention has an excuse to just drift off somewhere else.
And that's where this whole idea of mixed signals comes in. And this isn't about being random. It's a deliberate strategy. It's all about intentionally creating this aura of mystery, this vibe that's hard to pin down. You want to make them curious, maybe even a little bit confused. The whole point is to make sure their mind is stuck on you, not anyone else.
Okay, so what are mixed signals really? Well, it's simpler than it sounds. It's all about showing off different, even contradictory parts of who you are. The point isn't to be fake, it's to show that you're complex, that you can't just be put in a simple box. And when people can't figure you out right away, well, they can't stop thinking about you. And here's the crazy part about how our brains work. When we meet someone we can't immediately figure out, we don't just walk away. No way. That confusion actually sparks our curiosity. It's like being handed a puzzle. You become this fascinating mystery they have to solve. And all that mental energy they're spending on you, that's what pulls them in.
So how do you actually do this? Think of it like mixing a cocktail, a contradictory cocktail. You take one part of your personality and mix it with its total opposite. So maybe you're really tough, but you have this surprisingly tender side. Or you're super spiritual, but also really down to earth and kind of sensual. Or maybe you seem all innocent, but you've got this sharp, cunning streak. It's that mix that nobody sees coming that keeps them totally hooked.
This strategy isn't new at all. It's been perfected for centuries, and there's one classic archetype that is the absolute master of it, the coquette. And listen, this goes way beyond just playing hard to get. This is a masterclass in psychology, and it's all built on one incredibly powerful thing: making people wait.
So the coquette is a genius at this emotional push and pull. First, they give you a little bit of hope, a taste of what you want. They make you feel like happiness is right around the corner. But then, just as you think you've got it, they pull back. They create this distance, this frustration. And it's that constant back and forth, that dance between getting closer and being pushed away, that is just so addictive.
And that right there is the secret sauce. It's this loop, this cycle of heat and coolness. One minute they're warm and inviting, the next they're distant and cold. It's that unpredictability that creates an emotional roller coaster. And believe it or not, it's highly addictive. It just raises the stakes and keeps the other person completely obsessed, always guessing what you'll do next.
Okay, this might sound a bit theoretical, so let's look at a real story. Our first case study is wild. It's about a woman named Cressida and the legendary seducer Don Juan. And it's a perfect example of how throwing up a sudden wall can make you the most desirable person in the room.
So here's the setup. Years after Don Juan basically ghosted her, Cressida sets up this whole scene. She shows up looking amazing, super elegant, looking rich, and just like that, his interest is sparked all over again. That's the heat. But, and this is the genius part, when he comes over to talk to her, she hits him with the ultimate rejection. She says talking to him is forbidden because she's married now. Bam, that's the coolness. And by doing that, she instantly became this forbidden fruit, a prize he just had to win. Turns out the whole rich husband thing was a total prank, but man, what a brilliant move.
Okay, so that was a very direct, dramatic example. But what if the approach is more subtle? Let's look at our next case study, the writer and psychoanalyst Lou von Salome. She didn't use one big wall. Instead, she was a master of the slow burn, constantly sending mixed signals just by being completely unpredictable.
Salome's secret weapon? Competition. She was always surrounded by admirers, including some of the biggest thinkers of her day, like Nietzsche and Paul Rée. And she was brilliant at playing them off each other. Get this, Rée asks her to travel with him, and Nietzsche basically says, "I'm coming too." Salome says, "Okay, sure."
But then she turns around and accepts an invitation to stay with Nietzsche instead of Ray. Can you imagine the frustration, the drama? Nobody ever felt like they truly had her, and that constant uncertainty is exactly what made them all the more desperate for her attention.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway here? It really comes down to the incredible power of mystery. We're just wired this way as humans. We are drawn to puzzles, to things we can't quite figure out. We're not interested in the book we've already read. We want the one with the surprise ending. We love a good challenge.
And look, the crucial thing to get here is that this isn't really about being manipulative. It's about understanding a deep-seated truth about what makes people tick. By being a little less of an open book and a little more like a great story with a few missing pages, you just become so much more interesting, so much more compelling.
So I'll leave you with this to chew on. In a world that's always screaming for total transparency, for putting everything out there, what do we really value more? The thing we have in our hand or the thing we can't quite grasp? It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it?
All right, let's get right into it. Have you ever really stopped and thought about where your desires come from? I mean, we all like to think we're in the driver's seat, right? That we want what we want for our own personal reasons. But what if I told you that one of the biggest things shaping who or what you find attractive is, well, it's other people? Just think about it for a second. You're walking down the street, you're hungry, and you see two restaurants right next to each other. One is buzzing. You can hear people talking, it's full of life. The other one? Totally empty. Crickets. Which one are you drawn to? It's a no-brainer, right? It's always the full one. That's a little thing called social proof.
And here's the kicker. That exact same gut feeling doesn't just work for restaurants or the latest gadget. Nope. It's a deep, fundamental part of how we desire other people. We are just powerfully, almost magnetically, pulled toward people who are already wanted by others.
So how does this actually play out? The whole mechanism behind this is something we can call the seduction triangle. Let's break down exactly how it works to create this powerful sense of value and desire out of thin air. Okay, so here's the core idea. The seduction triangle isn't just a simple rivalry like in the movies. It is a deliberate, calculated strategy. By making sure you're seen with admirers, whether they're real or just seem real, you completely change the game. You're not just some person anymore. You become a prize, something that has to be won. Your value is suddenly validated by the attention of a whole bunch of other people. So this is basically the engine that makes the whole thing run. First, you've got social proof. That's the restaurant effect. If they want you, you must be worth wanting. Second, it creates competition. Now the person isn't just trying to win you over, they're trying to win against other people. And third, and this one is huge, it triggers a very primal fear of loss. The thought of someone else getting you becomes, well, almost unbearable. This really taps into that whole forbidden fruit effect, you know? The triangle strategy, it creates a challenge, a little barrier. It makes the person seem just a bit out of reach. And for whatever reason, that difficulty is just incredibly attractive. We're literally hardwired to value what we have to fight for. Now, to really see just how potent this strategy can be, let's jump back in time to an absolutely fascinating real-life example. It's an incredible story of passion, intellect, and some seriously next-level psychological games, all involving some of the greatest thinkers of the 19th century. So this is the wild story of Lou von Salome, a truly brilliant woman who completely captivated two major philosophers, Paul Ricoeur and the famous Friedrich Nietzsche. And as you can see from this timeline, this was no accident. Salome was the architect of this entire situation. It all started with Ricoeur's crush, but she's the one who deliberately brought Nietzsche into the picture to light the fuse. So the story kicks off with this philosopher, Paul Ricoeur, and he is just completely infatuated with Salome. But instead of just letting that play out, she makes a very strategic move. She knows he's friends with the already famous Nietzsche, and she asks for an introduction. Now, this wasn't some casual request. This was a chess move. This was her creating the third point of the triangle on purpose. And just like that, poof, the entire dynamic flips. Ricoeur, who probably thought he had a pretty clear shot, is now literally on the outside looking in. He had to stand there and watch as his crush and his famous friend built this intellectual and personal connection, often leaving him out completely. He wasn't just a suitor anymore. He was a competitor in a game he didn't even know he was playing.
I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? Salome was a master at keeping both men completely off balance. She'd accept an invitation to travel with one of them, then suddenly change her mind and stay with the other. This constant back and forth, this uncertainty, it just fueled Ray's obsession and jealousy. He was totally trapped, constantly fighting for her attention. And in the end, her strategy worked almost too well. Her connection to a celebrity intellectual like Nietzsche just amplified her own desirability. And even after Rhee did get her to himself for a little while, the cycle just started all over again with other men. She had successfully branded herself as a prize to be won, and that's exactly how the world saw her. Okay, so that was the 1800s. You might be thinking, that's a crazy story, but what's it got to do with today? Well, believe it or not, this principle is more relevant now than it's ever been, especially in the world we live in. The seduction triangle hasn't disappeared, it's just evolved. Just take a look at this comparison. Why was Salome so desired? In large part because of her public association with Nietzsche. Now fast forward to today, and think about someone like Pete Davidson. His romantic history is filled with incredibly famous and desirable women. That creates its own powerful social proof. His value is constantly being validated by the public desire of others. It is the exact same principle, just playing out over 100 years later. And here's the crucial update for the digital age. That third point of the triangle, it doesn't even have to be one specific person anymore. A lot of the time, it's a crowd, a massive Instagram following, tons of public praise, a glowing reputation. All of these things signal to someone new that you are already an object of widespread desire. I mean, this is basically the modern influencer playbook, right? They adopt this persona, this mysterious, captivating siren archetype, to create an aura of being incredibly desirable. And that huge following they build, that's the triangle. That mass of admirers is what validates their appeal and constantly pulls in new people who think, hey, what's everyone so excited about? And just to bring this all home, this entire concept is laid out plain as day in Robert Greene's massive book, The Art of Seduction. It's right there. Law number 4, appear to be an object of desire. Create triangles. This isn't some new age trick. It's a timeless strategy of human psychology that's been documented and used for centuries. So, after going through the theory, a wild historical case study, and how it all works in the modern world, what's the one big thing we should really walk away with? It all boils down to this. Desirability is not always some natural, intrinsic quality. A lot of the time, it's a social illusion. It's built entirely on the perception of demand. We're just fundamentally wired to want what other people in our tribe already seem to want. And understanding this, it doesn't just demystify attraction. It gives you a brand new lens to see the social games being played all around you. And that brings me to my final question for you. In advertising, in celebrity culture, maybe even in your own group of friends, now that you know the pattern, now that you can see the strings being pulled, where are you going to notice this powerful, ancient game of desire being played out next?
Have you ever met someone and felt this instant, almost magical connection, only to look back later and realize you were being, well, carefully guided, maybe even manipulated? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a seriously powerful strategy of influence, creating a false sense of security. It's this hidden game played in romance, in business, in politics, and you might be a part of it without even knowing.
But first, think about this. When a total stranger comes on way too strong, what's your first reaction? You put up a wall, right? That direct, super intense approach, it just feels aggressive. It immediately triggers our defenses and makes us think, okay, what does this person really want?
So how do the masters of influence get around that wall? Well, in this explainer, we're going to first break down the core indirect strategy. Then we'll dive into 3 really fascinating methods, everything from historical takedowns to modern psychological games. And you'll want to stick around, because at the end, we'll connect all the dots with one crucial takeaway.
Okay, so rule number 1 of this whole game, never ever announce your intentions. Real influence, it has to start indirectly. It's not about kicking down the front door, it's about slipping in through an open window, making your presence felt so subtly that the target doesn't even think to sound the alarm.
And this isn't just some vague idea. It's literally law number 2 in Robert Greene's classic, The Art of Seduction. The whole principle is to operate under the radar, to make your influence feel as natural and as harmless as just a friendly chat.
And right there, that's the end game. You create this bubble of comfort, this feeling of total security.
And once their guard is completely down, their defenses just crumble. That makes them totally open and, yeah, totally vulnerable to your influence.
All right, let's get into our first method, strategic isolation. And to see just how devastating this can be, we have to go way back in time to an incredible story of a king, a courtesan, and a kingdom that was brought to its knees.
Now forget chains and dungeons. This is pure psychological warfare. It's about systematically cutting all the cords that connect a person to their world, their friends, their family, their trusted advisors, until they're just floating in a void with only one person left to cling to.
It's a classic two-step move. First, the setup. Shashir arrives not as an enemy, but as a harmless gift, which lets her waltz right past all the king's defenses. And then, the strike. From the inside, she becomes his absolute obsession, and one by one she gets him to push away his advisors until he has no one left to trust but her.
And the result? Complete and utter devastation. With his advisors gone and his treasury totally drained on a palace for her, the king was basically a sitting duck. His rival just swooped in for an easy victory. It's a brutal, brutal lesson in the power of an attack that's disguised as a gift.
Okay, so from the battlefields of ancient China, let's switch gears and turn to a much more intimate kind of warfare, the psychological game of the rake. This isn't about isolating the target from others, it's about overwhelming them with a kind of weaponized attention.
I bet you know this person. They are a master listener. When they talk to you, the rest of the world just vanishes. Their phone is away, their eyes are locked on you, and for those few moments, you feel like the most interesting, fascinating person alive. And honestly, it's intoxicating.
So what's actually going on in your brain when this happens? Well, that kind of intense, undivided attention is incredibly rare, so it triggers a powerful chemical reaction. We're talking a massive dopamine hit. It feels so good to feel that special that your critical thinking literally shuts down, and you become addicted to the person who's making you feel that way.
And listen, this is not just about romance. It's a powerhouse tactic in leadership. A CEO who gives an employee just 5 minutes of their undivided, laser-focused attention can create a kind of loyalty that lasts for years. It's that powerful.
Our final method is maybe the most insidious of all. It's not just about making you feel seen. It's about literally becoming a perfect mirror of your deepest, most hidden desires. You can think of these people as psychological chameleons. They study you. They learn what's missing in your life, whether it's adventure, or stability, or intellectual challenge, and then they transform themselves into the perfect solution, the living, breathing embodiment of your fantasies. So why is this so effective? Because, let's be honest, we're all a little bit narcissistic. We are naturally drawn to people who reflect our ideal selves back at us. The ideal lover just expertly engineers this feeling, making you feel so deeply understood that you basically hand over your trust without a second thought.
So what's the real difference here? Let's break it down. The rake puts you on a pedestal in their world, but the ideal lover builds a whole new world that looks exactly like yours. One is a spotlight, the other is a mirror.
Okay, so we've looked at isolation, intense focus, and perfect mirroring. What's the common thread here? What's the one thing that makes all these indirect strategies so lethally effective?
It all comes down to this. Each method creates such an overwhelming feeling of safety, or of being special, or being understood, that the target willingly, happily dismantles their own defenses. The manipulation isn't some hostile takeover. It's a welcome invitation. And this is exactly why you need to understand this. The salesperson who just seems to get you, the politician who perfectly reflects your values, the boss who makes you feel absolutely indispensable. They're all, in their own way, playing variations of this same ancient game of influence. So I'll leave you with this thought. Now that you know the rules of this hidden game, you're going to start seeing it everywhere, in your relationships, at your job, in the news. The question is no longer if the game is being played. The real question is, are you a player or are you a pawn?
Today, we're going to dive into a psychological strategy that is so powerful. It can almost feel like a kind of magic. It's really a key to influence, to persuasion that works almost invisibly, just under the surface of our conscious minds. We are talking about the art of mirroring. But first, let's kick things off with a question I think we've all asked ourselves at some point. Why is it sometimes just impossible to change someone's mind. I mean, you can lay out the most perfect logical argument, you can have all the data in the world, and still, you get nothing. They just will not budge. So what is that invisible wall we keep hitting? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple, but it's also really profound. See, most of us, we're just locked inside our own little worlds. We're totally absorbed in our own thoughts, our own day-to-day dramas, our insecurities, our egos, and that internal monologue is just so loud that it creates this natural resistance to pretty much anything coming from the outside. It's what makes us stubborn, defensive, and yeah, incredibly hard to persuade. So, how do you get past a fortress like that? The solution is completely counterintuitive. Seriously, instead of trying to smash down their walls with brute force, you find a secret door. And the strategy is called entering their spirit. Now, notice the complete reversal of tactics here. You have to forget about trying to pull them into your world with your opinions and your values. The entire strategy is about adjusting completely to theirs. You play by their rules. You see the world from their perspective. You literally adopt their reality to kind of lure them out of that self-absorbed shell. You essentially become a reflection. And here's the really crucial part. When you mirror someone, you bypass their resistance completely. Just think about it for a second. What is there to argue with? What is there to push back against? If you're just validating their worldview, if you're reflecting their own energy right back at them, their defenses have nowhere to go. They just melt away. Okay, so this breaks down into 3 core actions. First, you play by their rules. This means you conform to their habits, their schedule, their unique little ways of doing things, doesn't matter how quirky. Second, you enjoy what they enjoy. You find a way to share their passions, their hobbies, their favorite music, their political views. And third, you adapt to their moods. If they're all excited and energetic, you match that frequency. If they're feeling kind of down or stressed, you offer a similar comforting energy. You become a soothing presence. This really gets to the psychological genius of the whole technique. See, by mirroring someone so completely, you are giving them the one thing every single human being craves: validation. You're basically telling them without saying a word, I see you, I get you, you're right. This satisfies a really deep-seated need we all have to be seen and understood, and it makes them feel incredibly comfortable. And just like that, all of their natural defenses against outsiders, they just come tumbling down. Now, this whole strategy isn't just some abstract theory. It's embodied perfectly in 2 master seductive archetypes. You've got the charmer, who really focuses on adapting to moods, and then you have the ideal lover, who takes it a giant step further by actually fulfilling what's missing in a person's life.
All right, first up, the charmer. This is the master of emotional mirroring. The charmer's power comes from one simple key principle. They make everything about the other person. They are absolute experts at deflecting attention away from themselves and instead focusing this intense, flattering spotlight right onto their target. They listen way more than they talk. They observe more than they perform. You see, they're a mirror, not a portrait. And the effect? Oh, it's intoxicating. As the author Robert Greene puts it, in the presence of a charmer, you feel better about yourself. And it's so true. Suddenly you feel seen, you feel heard, you feel deeply understood. They create this environment of such comfort and validation that just being around them becomes addictive. You start to crave that feeling you get when you're with them. So how do they actually do it? Well, they deflect any and all focus on themselves, and they pour all their energy into understanding the other person's spirit. They don't just listen to the words, they feel the person's pain, they ride the waves of their joy, they adapt to their moods completely. And the result is this incredibly comforting space where the other person's ego feels perfectly safe and just indulged. It's a subtle but immensely powerful form of influence. But what if you could take this mirroring to an even deeper, more calculated level? Well, that brings us to our second archetype, the ideal lover. This is someone who doesn't just mirror what's already there, they become what's missing. The ideal lover is often called a chameleon or a shapeshifter, and for good reason. They study a person, and then they construct a persona that perfectly reflects that person's deepest, most secret fantasies. They find the empty spaces in someone's life, the broken dreams, the unfulfilled desires, the hidden ambitions, and they become the living, breathing embodiment of the solution. Now, this is where the strategy can take a much darker turn, because the ideal lover isn't being their authentic self. Not at all. They are a custom-designed personality, tailored specifically for one single target. It's a profoundly manipulative act, really, because the person the target is falling for doesn't actually exist. They're falling for a reflection of their own needs. Their process is methodical, almost scientific. It starts with psychological profiling, basically studying their target to find out exactly what they lack. Is it adventure, stability, maybe intellectual stimulation? Then they mirror those interests. If the target loves obscure foreign films, suddenly the ideal lover is a huge cinephile. If the target is ambitious workaholic, the ideal lover becomes their #1 cheerleader. And finally, they relentlessly insinuate compatibility, framing every little shared interest as a sign of destiny, making it seem like they were just made for each other. And the result of all this intense, tailored mirroring? It's devastatingly effective. We're talking about total emotional dependence. The target becomes so reliant on this perfect match, this one person who fulfills their every need, that pretty soon, everyone else in their life just starts to seem dull, ordinary. And that right there, that is the ultimate outcome of successfully entering and, frankly, dominating someone's inner world. So we've seen just how powerful this strategy is, but it also walks a very, very fine line. There is absolutely no question that entering their spirit is one of the most potent tools of influence ever conceived. I mean, the ability to bypass resistance by deeply understanding and reflecting another person's reality, it's a kind of social superpower. It lets you connect, persuade, and influence in ways that direct confrontation just never, ever could. And that leaves us with one final big question. Is mirroring just a form of deep, strategic empathy, a way to truly and genuinely connect with someone? Or is it a tool for dark manipulation designed to exploit a person's needs for your own personal gain? The line can be pretty blurry. The power of this technique is undeniable, but whether it's used to build bridges or to set traps, well, I suppose that's up to the person in the mirror.
You ever have an idea pop into your head, one that feels completely, 100% yours, only to kind of wonder later on, where did that actually come from? Well, today we are diving deep into the subtle, almost invisible power of insinuation. It's this psychological tool that's so effective, it can literally shape what you want and what you decide without you ever even noticing. And we're gonna start with a really fascinating historical puzzle. So, picture this, it's 1882. The main players are Lou Andreas Salome, this brilliant and totally captivating young woman from Russia, and then you have two of the 19th century's greatest philosophical minds, Paul Riesz and his very close friend, the legendary Friedrich Nietzsche.
And this is the central mystery, right? This wasn't just some simple romance. It was a full-blown intellectual and emotional battle. You have these two men, famous for their sharp, analytical minds, and they are just completely enthralled by her. So, what was her secret? How on earth did she create a situation where two geniuses were actively fighting for her attention?
Well, the answer wasn't some direct command or an obvious display of charm. No, the key to this whole dynamic, the secret weapon, is the art of insinuation, a strategy of influence that operates completely under the radar.
So what exactly is it? Look, insinuation isn't about telling someone what to think, not at all. It's about planting a seed. It could be a vague comment, a subtle glance, maybe an ambiguous gesture. And then that little idea takes root in their mind over days, until it finally blooms into what they believe is their own original thought.
And this is where it becomes a total masterclass in influence. Think about it. If you're too direct with someone, their alarm bells immediately go off, right? They feel manipulated, they put up a wall. Well, insinuation is designed specifically to just slip right past those defenses, communicating directly with the unconscious mind.
And this is the crucial part. Because the idea feels like it comes from inside us, we don't fight it. We actually embrace it. It completely bypasses our critical thinking and our logical reasoning, which is exactly what makes this technique so uniquely powerful and, in some cases, so incredibly dangerous.
So how does this actually work in the real world? Let's break down 3 classic archetypes who are absolute masters of insinuation. Each one uses it to plant a very different, but an equally powerful idea.
First up, the rake. The rake's entire goal is to insinuate specialness. I mean, think about a normal conversation you have today. People are often distracted, they're half listening, their phone is buzzing. Now compare that to the rake's method, intense, undivided focus. It's a huge contrast, and believe me, that difference is everything.
You see, this isn't just about being a good listener, it's a calculated performance. The phone is silent, it's put away. Their eyes are locked on your face, they react to every single word, nodding, showing surprise, asking immediate follow-ups like, wait, what happened next? And then days later, they'll bring up some tiny detail you mentioned. This creates this profound sense of being seen and truly heard.
The thing is, the rake never actually says these words. They don't have to. Their unwavering attention insinuates it. In a world of constant distraction, getting that kind of focus fills a deep human need, the need for validation. It acts like a powerful dopamine hit, making you feel uniquely important. And when someone makes you feel that special, well, your defenses just melt away.
All right, let's move on to our second archetype, the siren, who's all about insinuating intimacy and mystery. Their method is incredibly deliberate. It starts with how they talk. By slowing their speech down and lowering their pitch just a bit, they give their voice a kind of calm and weight that just draws you in, making every word feel more significant.
Now here's a really key part of the technique. In a normal, non-threatening conversation, eye contact lasts about 2 seconds. The siren holds it for 4 or 5. It's just a couple of extra seconds, but psychologically, that crosses a major social boundary. It shifts the entire interaction from just a casual chat into what our brains register as romantic territory, subtly insinuating a much deeper connection.
And finally, there's the incomplete thought. A siren might end a conversation with a phrase just like this, followed by a pregnant pause. That pause, that's the weapon. It forces your mind to fill in the blank, to wonder, what did they really mean by that? And that unresolved thought gets stuck in your head, making sure the siren stays on your mind long after they've gone.
Which brings us to our third method, and it brings us right back to our original story. This technique doesn't rely on a one-on-one interaction. Instead, it's all about manipulating social dynamics to insinuate high value.
So how did Lou Andrea Salome pull this off? It was a masterful, strategic play. First, she connects with the respected philosopher Paul Ree. Then, instead of going after Nietzsche directly, she has Ree, his friend and intellectual equal, make the introduction. Bam! This immediately positions her right at the center of their world, strategically creating a competitive triangle.
And here's the magic trick. Salome's desirability was never proclaimed by her, it was proven by her admirers. We are social creatures. We want what other people want. The simple fact that 2 of the era's greatest minds were competing for her was the ultimate social proof. It insinuated that she was a prize of immense value, which made her infinitely more desirable to them and to everyone else.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Whether it's the rake's intense focus, the siren's mysterious pauses, or the object of desire's manufactured competition, the principle is exactly the same. It's all about invisible influence.
You see, real power in persuasion isn't about forcing someone to agree with you. It's about creating the perfect conditions for them to convince themselves. It's about making your idea feel like their amazing discovery. That is the art of insinuation, and it's happening all around us, all the time. Which leaves us with a final thought. This isn't just some historical curiosity or a seducer's trick. This is a fundamental part of human dynamics. You see it in marketing, in politics, in our own personal lives. So the question is, now that you know how it works, who in your world is pulling the strings? And maybe more importantly, which ideas that you hold so dear might not be entirely your own?
Okay, what if I told you that one of the most powerful strategies of influence has absolutely nothing to do with making someone happy? Sounds kind of backward, right? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty dangerous psychological tactic that's built on one single, really surprising truth about what we humans desire. Yeah, just let that sink in for a second. Think about it. If a person is completely, totally satisfied with their life, they're whole, they're untouchable. It's like they're immune to any kind of charm because there's just no crack in their armor, you know? No empty space for anyone else to fill.
So the real takeaway here, the key, isn't about showering someone with pleasure. It's actually the opposite. It's about carefully, subtly taking apart their sense of satisfaction. And that's exactly what we're going to break down in this explainer, how that process actually works.
And look, this isn't just some abstract idea. It comes straight from our source material today, a very specific law from Robert Greene's, well, let's just say infamous book. And the goal? It's simple, but it's also pretty ruthless. Create a need out of thin air, and then position yourself as the one and only solution to it.
All right, so how does someone actually do this? Let's get into the nitty-gritty.
the core mechanism. You can almost think of it as a kind of psychological engineering. The whole point is to make someone feel like something absolutely crucial is missing from their life.
So the big idea here is to create tension, on purpose, to create disharmony. You make your target feel unhappy, maybe a little inadequate about their situation, and bam, you've just created this emotional vacuum. And according to this strategy, that little bit of pain, that anxiety, it's actually a necessary first step before you swoop in and offer the pleasure that fixes it all.
It really boils down to a 4-step process. Step 1, you find the hidden cracks. What are they really not happy about deep down? Then, step 2, you just gently poke at those sore spots, those insecurities, to really open up that emotional void. And it's only after they're feeling unsettled that you step in, presenting yourself as the one person who can make it all better.
Okay, I know this might all sound a bit theoretical, so let's look at some real-world, or at least historical examples. We're going to check out 2 totally different but man, equally effective tactics for destabilizing someone's world.
So, on one side, you've got isolation. The goal there? Total dependency. And on the other side, you have rejection, which is all about creating a challenge they just can't resist. You can kind of see them as 2 sides of the same coin, right? It's all about controlling someone's emotional reality, either by becoming their entire world or by becoming the world they want more than anything but believe they can't have.
All right, first up, let's talk about King Fu Chai. He just defeated a rival king, and that rival, wanting revenge, sends him a woman named Shishir. And get this, she was trained for years, specifically to bring him down. So what does she do? First, she slowly cuts him off from all his trusted advisors, whispering in his ear that he's way smarter than they are. Then, she becomes impossible to please. Her moods, her tears, they create this constant state of anxiety for the king. He becomes obsessed with just keeping her happy. And pretty soon, he's ditching his royal duties, his family, everything. She literally created a bubble where she was the only thing that mattered. And that made him completely dependent and, in the end, incredibly weak.
And this quote from the source material just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly sums up what isolation does to a person psychologically. You take away all their safety nets, their friends, their daily habits, their sense of who they are, and you leave them feeling totally lost. And when they're adrift like that, who do they turn to? You. You become their only anchor.
Okay, now for the second case study, which flips the script entirely. Instead of creating dependency, it creates a barrier. So, the legendary seducer Don Juan had, years earlier, abandoned this young woman, Cressida. So what does she do? She gets revenge. She sets up a meeting years later, but now she shows up looking rich, happily married, and completely out of his league. She straight up rejects him, telling him he's forbidden. And this just drives him crazy. He can't sleep, he's depressed, his desire for her becomes this all-consuming obsession precisely because she's off limits. Now the crazy part, the whole thing was a setup, a prank. But even after he learned the truth, that need she had manufactured in him was so powerful, he still begged her to marry him. Wild, right?
And that right there is the core psychological trick Cressida used. We've all heard of it, the forbidden fruit effect. There's just something in us humans that makes us perversely excited about the things we're told we can't have. So by creating that barrier, she created a challenge. It wasn't even about her anymore. It was about the thrill of the chase, the conquest of getting what was supposedly impossible.
So, okay, we've seen how this strategy works, but the bigger question is, who does it work on? Is everyone susceptible? Well, the truth is, this kind of tactic is way more effective when it's aimed at people who are already missing something, people who already have some kind of hidden void in their lives.
Yeah, think of it like this. If contentment is a shield, a manipulator is always looking for the cracks in the armor. They're searching for those existing insecurities, those little dissatisfactions that are already bubbling under the surface. Because, let's be real, it is so much easier to widen a crack that's already there than it is to try and break solid steel.
And the source material actually lays out a few common archetypes of people who are especially vulnerable. You've got the lost limb, someone who secretly wants love but pretends to hate it because they've been hurt, or the crushed star who desperately misses being in the spotlight. Then there's the pampered kid who's just bored with everything, and the novice who's looking for an older, wiser guide. These are all people who might look fine on the outside, but underneath they're starving for something more.
Let's zoom in on the lost limb for a second. This is the person who got their heart broken, right? And now they put up this huge wall saying they're done with love, done with relationships, but deep down, that desire hasn't gone away. It's just sleeping like a lion. So So the goal for a manipulator is to poke that sleeping lion, to reignite those old feelings and make them feel dissatisfied with the lonely fortress they've built for themselves.
And what about the crushed star? This could be a former athlete, an actor, anyone who used to be the center of attention and isn't anymore. Now, they'll probably tell you they don't miss it, that they're happy with a quiet life, but the source material says they're starving for it. So a manipulator comes along, puts them back in the limelight, and validates that secret craving. And that creates a super powerful bond of dependency.
Okay, we've gone through some pretty dark psychological stuff here. So the big important question is, what's the point? What do you do with this knowledge? And I want to be super clear about this. This is not a how-to guide. This is a how-to spot guide.
The whole goal of understanding these tactics isn't to become a manipulator yourself. It's to become aware of the psychological games that people can play. When you understand these patterns, you can start to recognize when someone might be trying to make you feel insecure or unhappy for their own benefit. It's all about building up your psychological immune system, not learning how to attack. And it's so important to remember what the source material claims about all of this. It's almost entirely a psychological game. Looks, physical appearance, that might only be about 10, maybe 15% of the whole dynamic. The real battle, the real game, is played in the mind. It's all about understanding, and sometimes exploiting, human insecurity.
So I guess I'll just leave you with this to think about. After everything we've talked about, is desire something we just feel? Or is it something that can be created inside of us? Is it possible for someone else to plant a need in your head and then convince you that you wanted it all along? It's a pretty chilling thought, and definitely one worth mulling over.
All right, let's just jump right in. When you think about power, about attraction, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably strength, right? Flawless confidence, total control. But what if I told you the single most powerful tool of seduction isn't about being strong at all? What if it's about seeming weak? So that's the big question we're tackling today. What is the actual, honest-to-goodness secret to seduction? I mean, if it's not all the stuff we've been told our whole lives, then what is it? You know the drill. The common advice is always to put your best foot forward. Be perfect, be strong, never let them see you sweat. You're basically told to build this impenetrable fortress of coolness around yourself, and that's what's supposed to make you attractive. Well, here's the twist. The greatest players in the game of seduction knew the truth is the exact opposite. The real secret, the thing that actually works, is way more surprising. It's weakness, or to be more precise, strategic weakness. And that brings us to what's often called Law 13. It's all about using strategic weakness to completely disarm someone. And trust me, this idea flips the script on everything you probably thought you knew about attraction. So what on earth does that mean? Well, it's the art of seeming vulnerable. It's about putting on a performance of being emotional or not quite in control. See, when you do that, your motives don't seem so calculated. The person you're interested in stops seeing you as some kind of predator, and boom, their defenses just melt away. This quote just nails the psychology. You let the other person feel like they're the strong one, the one in charge. You're basically playing the victim, which makes them feel sorry for you. And that sympathy? It's the perfect backdoor to create a much deeper emotional bond, even love. It's a total psychological judo move. Okay, so let's break down how this actually works in someone's head. It's like a chain reaction. First, you fake a little weakness. That makes them drop their guard. Then, because you seem vulnerable, whatever you do next feels real, not like some planned out move. This kicks in their protective instincts, making them feel all strong and superior. And that feeling of sympathy is the bridge that turned a simple connection into a powerful attachment. Now, theory's one thing, but seeing it in action is something else entirely. And oh boy, do we have a story for you. Let's dive into the incredible tale of a woman named Crishetta and the ultimate revenge prank she pulled on a legendary seducer. So meet our players. On one side, you've got the one and only Don Juan, the world's most famous lover. Arrogant, gets bored in 5 minutes, a total heartbreaker. And on the other side, Crishetta, a poor, orphaned girl he used and tossed aside after one night. I mean, the power imbalance here is just massive. Or so you'd think. So, years pass. Don Juan's forgotten all about her, but she has not forgotten him. And she comes up with a brilliant plan. She re-enters his life, but this time she's disguised as a rich, elegant, and, this is the key part, happily married woman.
Being forbidden drives Don Juan absolutely nuts. He becomes completely obsessed, and right when he's about to crack, she unleashes her final move.
And we really have to pause here, because this is the genius of her plan. For a guy like Don Juan, who can have anyone he wants, the only thing that's truly valuable is the one thing he can't have. Cressida made herself the ultimate prize. That barrier she put up, that became the source of all her power.
And the effect on him was, well, it was devastating. This master of cool, this guy who was always in control, was a complete and utter wreck. He couldn't sleep, he was depressed, all he could think about was conquering this one woman he couldn't have. She had him right where she wanted him.
So, here's the million-dollar question. She's got him on the hook, he's at his breaking point. How does she close the deal? How does she turn his obsession into complete and total surrender?
Now, you'd think she would double down on the strength, right? Play even harder to get. But no, she does the last thing anyone would expect. At the peak of his obsession, she doesn't build the wall higher, she tears it down completely.
So Don Juan shows up at her lavish home ready to whisk her away, but he's told to go around back. And there she is, dressed in simple maid's clothes. She confesses everything. The rich husband, the fancy life, it was all a prank. She's still just the poor girl he left behind. In that one moment, poof, the entire illusion just shatters. So what's the result of this epic reveal, this absolute display of vulnerability? It was total, unconditional surrender. The world's greatest seducer, the guy who never committed to anyone, does the one thing nobody ever thought he would. He asks her to marry him. I mean, that is just a wild story, isn't it? And it makes you wonder, why did that work so perfectly? What is it about that sudden show of weakness that's so incredibly powerful? Let's break it down. Okay, let's put ourselves in Don Juan's shoes for a second. His whole world just got turned upside down. First, any suspicion he had just evaporates. He stops seeing her as a manipulator and starts seeing her as a heartbroken woman who did something desperate. Suddenly, the power flips back to him. He feels strong, protective, and his guard just drops. That feeling turns to sympathy, and that powerful cocktail of feeling protective and connected hardens into something he can only call love. So when you put the two approaches side by side, it's really night and day. If you're always acting strong and perfect, people get suspicious. They're always looking for the angle. But strategic weakness, it just bypasses all that. It makes the other person feel safe, powerful, and in the end, totally open to you. And this brings us right to the end of our explainer. And, to the pretty thorny ethical question at the heart of all this. Look, there is zero doubt that real, genuine vulnerability is the bedrock of any meaningful human connection. It's how we build trust. But what we've been talking about today, that's not it. This is vulnerability as a performance. It's manufactured. You could even say it's vulnerability as a weapon. And that's what I want to leave you with. In a world where it feels like everyone is desperately trying to project strength and perfection, could it be that the most powerful move you can make is to consciously appear weak? Is faking vulnerability the ultimate power play? That's something to think about.
You know those people who are just magnetic? They're not always predictable, and they're definitely not always available. But for whatever reason, that just makes you more fascinated by them. That's a real power, right? Well, today, we're gonna pull back the curtain and see exactly how that works.
All right, to really get this, let's start with a classic example from Robert Greene's work, The Coquette. Their whole game is built on creating this constant back and forth between making you hopeful and then frustrating you. Their secret weapon? It's all about delaying satisfaction.
So what's their playbook? It's all about being wildly unpredictable. One minute, they're all in, super warm and engaging. The next, they're distant, almost cold. See, it's not about being consistently nice. It's about being maddeningly inconsistent. And what does that do? It makes you obsess over them, trying to figure them out.
But why does this even work? I mean, it feels like it shouldn't, doesn't it? It seems totally counterintuitive. Well, it's because it taps into something really fundamental in our wiring, a core principle of attraction.
And this is where we get to the heart of it all. This all builds into one of the core laws of seduction, and it's all about breaking patterns. This isn't a day one move. No, this is what you do after you've already captured their attention, to keep that initial spark from just fizzling out into a boring old routine.
I mean, look at this. It spells it out perfectly.
Predictability is basically the death of seduction. Think about it. The second someone feels like they've got you all figured out, that they know exactly what you're going to do next, poof, the spell is broken. The real trick here is to never, ever let them get too comfortable.
Okay, so what do we actually mean by suspense in this context? It's not just random chaos. It's actually a simple two-part move. First, you create a pattern, something they get used to. Let's say you're the person who always calls on Tuesday night. They expect it. Then one Tuesday, nothing. Silence. That little break in the pattern, that's everything. That calculated surprise is what destroys the boredom and gets them thinking, wait, what's going on? And bam, they're hooked. Okay, sounds good in theory, right? But how do you actually do it? Again, this isn't about being chaotic for the sake of it. It's a strategy, and it really all boils down to 3 specific moves that create this powerful sense of suspense.
So here's the playbook. First, you've got the push and pull of hope and frustration. That creates that addictive tension. Second, you throw in some calculated surprises that make you seem really spontaneous. And third, you make these sudden shifts right when they think they've got you pinned down. Let's dig into each of these.
All right, step 1. This is all about the classic push-pull. You give them a glimpse of something amazing, true happiness, a real connection, but you never let them quite grab it. It's like giving them just a little taste of something delicious and then snatching the plate away. Of course they're going to want it even more.
And what this does is create this psychological tension. It's a bit of a paradox, right? You'd think delaying things would push them away, but no, it actually makes them lean in harder. They start pouring more time, more mental energy into winning you over, until pretty soon, the chase itself becomes the real addiction. Okay, move number 2, the calculated surprise. This is where you inject a little bit of beautiful chaos, an unexpected gift, a sudden change of plans, a totally different topic of conversation, and here's the magic of it. To them, it just seems like you're this incredibly spontaneous person. They have no idea it's actually a planned move designed to keep them completely off balance and totally fascinated.
And this, right here, is the key difference. On one hand, you've got predictability. Yeah, it's comfortable, it's certain, but let's be honest, it can get boring pretty fast. On the other hand, you have suspense. It creates a little bit of anxiety, a whole lot of uncertainty, and that's exactly where the excitement lives.
So you might be thinking this is some kind of new age dating advice, but not at all. This stuff is ancient. People have been using mystery and unpredictability to gain power for centuries. And I'm not just talking about love. We're talking politics, social power, you name it.
Think about the great figures in history. Did they just tell everyone everything? No way. They were masters at making people wait. They built up this aura of mystery by never revealing their whole story. They'd send mixed signals that would drive everyone crazy trying to figure them out. And every now and then, boom, a big, shocking move just to shake things up and keep everyone guessing. And this brings us to a really important warning. The trap a lot of people fall into is being too nice, too available, too eager. When you do that, you take away all the challenge. All the mystery's gone. And what's left? Monotony. And that's when you start to lose them. So let's get down to brass tacks. Why is this so powerful? It's not just some cheap trick. The reason suspense works is because it's hardwired into our psychology. And here's the core reason why. It's super simple, really. We value things we have to work for. It's called effort justification. The more time and energy you pour into something, the more you convince yourself it must be worth it. Winning something easily, meh, it feels kind of cheap. But something you had to fight for, that feels amazing. It feels earned. The pursuit becomes just as intoxicating as the prize itself. And at the end of the day, that's the real goal here, to live rent-free in their head. If you can keep them just a little bit off balance, a little uncertain, then you guarantee they're always thinking about you. They're replaying conversations, trying to figure you out. You become this fascinating puzzle that they just have to solve.
So that brings us to one last, really important thought. There's no doubt this stuff is powerful, but you can see how it walks a very, very fine line. So the question you have to ask yourself is, where's the boundary? When does creating a little captivating mystery turn into just toxic manipulation? Something to chew on for sure.
You know, when we talk about seduction, our minds usually jump to what we should say or do or how we should act when we're right there with someone. But what if the real power, the thing that makes you unforgettable, actually comes from what you do when you're not there at all? It's a bit of a counterintuitive idea, so let's really dive into it.
This question is really the heart of one of the most fascinating laws from the art of seduction. It's this idea that your presence is only half of the game. The other half, and you could argue it's the more powerful half, is all about mastering your absence. So how in the world does this actually work? Well, to get it, we first have to wrap our heads around the core concept here. It's called poeticizing your presence. And believe me, it is a total game of perception and imagination.
Okay, now what's so interesting about this definition is the shift it's talking about. You're not just a person in the room anymore. You become an idea. You become this fantasy that literally takes root in someone's mind. The real goal is to make your absence felt so intensely they can't stop thinking about you, replaying moments and filling in all the blanks with their own perfect idealized fantasies.
And this is absolutely crucial. Think about it. If someone feels a sense of relief when you leave the room, the spell is broken. It's over. You've become predictable, maybe a little tiresome, just common. This entire strategy is designed to make sure that never ever happens by making your presence a thrilling event and your absence a source of deep, deep curiosity.
And this slide, yeah, it lays out the dynamic perfectly. It's all a game of push and pull. So, when you're there, the push, you are on. You're exciting, you're captivating, you're fully present. But then you pull away. You create a void. And that calculated absence, that cool distance, that is what forces their mind to start working, to wonder, and to really, really want you to come back. Let's look at a couple of archetypes who are absolute masters of this.
First up, we've got the siren. The siren is probably the most powerful example of someone who lives and breathes this law, literally turning themselves into a pure, walking fantasy. You see, sirens represent an escape from the boring day-to-day. They offer this glimpse into a world of pure pleasure and fantasy, a total release from all the responsibilities and limits of normal life. They don't sell reality, they sell the dream. So how do they pull it off? It is all in the little details. A siren never ever tells you everything. There's always some secret you feel like you're just on the edge of figuring out, which just makes you crave more. Their movements are slow, graceful, very deliberate. They use intense, prolonged eye contact. We're talking just a second or two longer than is comfortable to create this super intimate connection. These aren't just random quirks, they are all carefully crafted details that build a poetic image, an overall vibe that gets stuck in your head long after they've walked away.
And this right here is the key. The siren's power isn't about being the perfect person in the real world. Nope, it's about representing the perfect fantasy. They embody this ideal that you can never quite grab onto, and that's exactly what makes them so intoxicating.
Okay, so that's the siren. Now let's switch gears and see how this very same principle gets used in a totally different way by another archetype, the star. The star uses distance and perception to get a similar but pretty distinct effect.
So, unlike the siren's up-close, intimate mystery, the star's power comes from a glamorous distance. They build this image of being totally separate from, and kind of above, everyday life. They are purposefully vague, dreamy, almost ethereal, which makes people imagine so much more about them than is actually real.
The process is actually pretty deliberate. First, they make a point of standing out, of not being part of the ordinary crowd. Second, they'll hold on to that vague, dreamy quality, never letting themselves become too familiar. And this all leads to the most powerful step of all. They become a blank screen. A screen where people can project all of their own broken dreams and lifelong fantasies.
This phrase just captures their whole essence perfectly. You can see them, you can admire them, you can be totally fascinated by them, but you can't quite reach them. And that elusiveness, that's the source of their power. It keeps people watching and wanting and imagining.
But how does a star create this incredible sense of desire from so far away? Well, they tap into a really fundamental psychological trigger, social proof. I mean, when you see that someone is admired and wanted by a lot of people, they automatically become more attractive, right? That's social proof working as a poetic association. Being surrounded by fans and admirers creates this powerful fantasy, forcing people to just imagine what it must be like to be you or to be with you. Your presence becomes poeticized not just by what you do, but by how everyone else reacts to you.
So all of this brings us to the ultimate goal of the entire strategy. And what's wild is that it's actually less about your actions and more about triggering the actions inside your target's own mind.
At the end of the day, every mysterious detail, every calculated absence, every single thrilling moment of your presence, it's all designed to do one thing. Give them something to think about when they're alone. You're planting these little seeds in their mind that are going to grow into full-blown fantasies while you're away. And this is the most powerful secret of all. By poeticizing your presence, you literally turn their own imagination into your greatest weapon or your greatest ally. The fantasies they cook up about you in your absence will always be more powerful, more perfect, and way more seductive than anything you could ever do in reality. You're not just seducing them, you're creating the perfect conditions for them to seduce themselves. Ultimately, a strategy like this operates in a pretty big moral gray area. It's an incredibly powerful way to create this enchanting allure, all by managing presence and absence. But because it all relies on creating a fantasy, an illusion really, it leaves us with one final question to think about. Where does captivating enchantment end, and where does calculated manipulation begin?
Today, we're going to break down one of the most powerful, and let's be honest, one of the most dangerous strategies of influence out there. This isn't a tactic that relies on charm or quick wit. No, this one works by creating a huge psychological and social void in a person's life. So let's dive in and see how this dark tactic actually works.
So let's just start with a really direct question, and it's a bit of an unsettling one. How do you gain absolute, total control over another person's mind and their actions? I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, but the method is deeply and kind of chillingly rooted in basic human psychology.
And the answer, according to this school of thought, is shockingly simple. It's not about force, it's not about persuasion, it's about one single, devastatingly effective concept: isolation. This is the master key, the thing that can make someone completely vulnerable to your influence.
To really get how this works, we first have to look at the psychological principle behind it all. We're talking about the principle of vulnerability. How do you actually strip away a person's strength to the point where they're utterly dependent on you?
Okay, so here's the core definition, right from the source material. Isolating the victim is a calculated strategy. It's all about making someone vulnerable by methodically, and often very slowly, cutting them off from their support systems. We're talking friends, family, and even just the simple, comforting rhythm of their day-to-day life.
I mean, think about it for a second. We all have a deep need for connection and stability, right? We build our lives around what the source calls nests and safety nets. These are our friends who just get us, our daily routines that keep us grounded, the familiar places that feel safe. All that stuff gives us a sense of continuity and control. It's really the foundation of our personal strength.
So the manipulator's goal is to just systematically pull that rug right out from under their target. It's basically a three-step process. First, you break their habits. Get them to do things they've never done before. Introduce a little chaos. Second, you remove their comforts. You distance them either physically or emotionally from their friends and family. And finally, you create dependence. See, once the target is lost, confused, and totally cut off from everything that used to comfort them, who do they turn to? They turn to the manipulator for help. Like the source says, like a child crying out for its mother when the lights are turned off.
You know, what's really striking here is the brutal honesty of this quote. It's comparing this tactic to warfare. Why? Well, think about it. An isolated army unit, cut off from its allies and supplies, is incredibly weak and super easy to defeat. It's the exact same principle in psychological manipulation.
Now, this might all sound pretty theoretical, but there's an incredible historical example that shows this strategy in devastating action. Let's take a look at the story of an ancient Chinese king, Fu Chai, and a woman named Shishir. So the setup here is everything. Years before our story even starts, King Fu Chai had totally humiliated his rival, King Gujian. So in this incredible act of long-game revenge, Gujian sends Fu Chai a gift, the beautiful Shishir. But this was no peace offering, not at all. As Fu Chai becomes instantly obsessed with her, Shishir gets to work, systematically isolating him from every single person and thing that gives him power. And the end result? It's tragic, but it's also completely predictable. His kingdom is in ruins, his enemy is literally at the gates, and with no one left to turn to, he sees only one way out. And this just perfectly illustrates the real mission. Shishir wasn't just sent to be a distraction. No, her goal, which Gujian trained her for 3 whole years, was to completely consume the king's mental and emotional energy. The whole point was to occupy every single corner of his mind, and by doing that, pull him away from the levers of power, leaving his throne completely undefended.
Okay, so let's really dig into the anatomy of this strategy.
we're going to break down exactly how Shashir's actions map directly onto that theory of isolation we were just talking about.
This slide just lays it out so clearly. Check out how her actions map to the methods of isolation. To sever his political ties, she just flattered his ego, telling him he was so much smarter than all his ministers. And eventually, he just stopped listening to them. For his social ties, she used pure emotional manipulation. She'd cry or get angry anytime he spent time with other people. So what did he do? He started ignoring family and skipping public events to keep her happy. His routines as king, completely shattered because she demanded his constant, undivided attention, leading him to miss council meetings altogether. And the final piece of the puzzle, she created a physical lair, this massive, luxurious palace that literally pulled him away from his capital and, just as important, completely drained the kingdom's treasury. His isolation was total.
And the results of all this is really the core of the strategy. Once a person is isolated, they have no external frame of reference. There's no friend to pull them aside and say, hey, does this seem kind of weird to you? No family to offer a different point of view. They have zero outside support. And in that state of confusion and loneliness, they are just incredibly easy to mislead.
So why does this ancient story even matter today? Well, because this pattern of behavior, it's not stuck in history books. It is a timeless tactic of control, and it is absolutely crucial to be able to recognize it when you see it in the modern world. All right, let's draw a really clear line here. A healthy, supportive connection is all about mutual growth, right? The other person encourages your friendships, they respect your family ties, they support your hobbies. Isolating control does the exact opposite. It creates friction with your friends and family, it eats up all your time, and it slowly makes you feel like the manipulator is the only person you can really, truly count on.
And these are the kinds of red flags you might actually hear or see. That classic line, "You don't need them, you have me." That's a huge one. Or someone who consistently gets upset or hurt whenever you make plans with other people. Or someone who's constantly bad-mouthing the people who've always been closest to you. The end result is this slow, creeping realization that they've become your entire world, not because you chose it, but because they designed it that way. Because that is the ultimate goal. It's to dismantle your entire support structure until the only pillar left standing is them. It is to make you believe, deep down, that without them, you are completely and utterly alone. You have nothing. So that brings us to our final thought for today. Now that you kind of get the mechanics of this tactic, where else do you see isolation being used as a tool of influence in the world around you? You know, in personal relationships, sure, but maybe in social groups, maybe even on a much larger political scale. It's a powerful pattern, a dangerous one, and it's definitely something worth watching for.
You know, when we think about seduction, our minds usually go to the beginning, right? That first look, a witty opening line. But today, we're flipping the script. We're jumping straight to the end game. We're gonna break down an incredibly potent psychological final move, a technique designed to just obliterate any doubt and force a complete and total emotional surrender.
All right, so to understand this, we're gonna dive into a story about a true master of the game. I mean, this guy was a hunter who never missed. But here's the twist. The real lesson here isn't about his tactics. It's about how he, the master, was the one who ended up in the trap. So, what happens when the hunter becomes the hunted?
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, how on earth do you trap someone who practically wrote the book on manipulation? Well, the secret, it lies in taking their own psychological triggers and flipping them right back on them.
Okay, let's set the stage and meet our players. So on one side, you've got Don Juan. His name is basically a synonym for seduction. We're talking a legendary reputation, a list of conquests literally in the thousands. And on the other side, we have Crescenta, a poor orphan who he's seduced and then just cast aside. I mean, the power imbalance here looks completely insane, right? He's the ultimate predator, and she's just the forgotten victim.
But fast forward a few years, and the entire game gets turned on its head. Don Juan is just walking through a park one day, and he spots this incredibly elegant, clearly wealthy woman with her son. He does a double take, and he's just floored to realize it's Crescenta. She's been completely transformed. She's not just well off now, she is, and this is the absolute key, married to a very rich man named Martinez.
And this is the psychological pivot point. For a guy like Don Juan, who lived and breathed for the chase, Crescenta wasn't just a person anymore. Oh no, she was a challenge. By becoming this unattainable, forbidden fruit, she instantly transformed into the one thing he absolutely had to possess. Cressida, it turns out, understood his psychology perfectly.
Now, let's be crystal clear about this. This was no accident. This wasn't some random chance encounter. This was a cold, calculated strategy. Cressida had engineered the ultimate temptation, a trap designed specifically to target Don Juan's single greatest weakness, his massive ego.
Her strategy was, honestly, a masterclass in psychological warfare. Let's break it down. Step 1. She presents this totally new, desirable, unattainable version of herself. Step 2. She puts up a massive barrier, her marriage. And then, step 3, the real kicker, when he inevitably comes after her, she shuts him down, hard. She rejects him completely, making any kind of contact feel forbidden. And of course, that just poured gasoline on the fire of his obsession.
And the effect on him? It was absolutely devastating. This guy, the master manipulator who had played with thousands of people's emotions, was now the one getting played. He became completely consumed by it. We're talking sleepless nights, obsessive thoughts about her husband, and he even fell into a deep depression. Her strategy didn't just pique his interest, it completely broke him.
So Don Juan is at his wit's end. He's just about to pack it in, to give up completely. And that's when Cressida makes her final move. Her entire elaborate plan has been leading up to this one single moment.
What she does next is a flawless execution of a psychological principle called prove yourself. See, Cressida knew that even in his obsessed state, Don Juan would have lingering doubts. Is this for real? Is she playing me? To completely shatter those last walls of resistance, she needed him to do something, to perform an act so definitive, so final, that it would leave zero room for rational thought.
The entire goal of this technique is to bypass logic. It has nothing to do with talking or convincing. It's all about forcing a single dramatic act of sacrifice. A deed so emotionally overwhelming that thinking, really thinking, becomes impossible.
So what was her condition? Get this. It wasn't enough for them to just secretly run away together. No. He had to come to her husband's house in the middle of the day and take her from there. Just stop and think about the stakes for a second. The public risk, the chance of a huge confrontation, the absolute nerve it would take. This was it. This was the ultimate test, the ultimate proof of his devotion.
Okay, so let's get into the why. Why is a dramatic action like this so much more powerful than any words or promises could ever be? Well, it all comes down to how our brains are fundamentally wired.
An action designed to prove yourself has a few key ingredients. First, it's gotta involve real sacrifice. It has to make you vulnerable. When those two things are present, it creates this intense emotional overload. And here's the key. It's not just an overload for the person watching, but also for the person doing the act. It's that shared emotional spike that just completely short-circuits the logical brain.
So what's actually happening inside your head? Well, on a neurological level, the sheer intensity of that moment hits the panic button on your limbic system. That's your primal emotional brain, the part that deals with pure feeling and survival. This emotional flood is so powerful that it just completely bypasses the prefrontal cortex, your logic center. It's like the feeling part of your brain hijacks the thinking part. You stop analyzing, you stop questioning, and you just start feeling. You're basically forced to believe.
So, with his logical brain completely offline, Don Juan accepts the challenge. He's all in. And what happens next really shows you the irreversible power of a commitment that's forged in this kind of emotional fire.
Okay, so picture this. He shows up at the house, he knocks on the door, and boldly asks for Miss Martinez. But the woman who answers says, "There's no Miss Martinez here. There's just a maid named Cressida." He's confused, he gets led around to the back, and there she is, in a simple servant's uniform. And then she drops the bomb. It was all a prank, a lie, a trap to get him. But here's the craziest part. Instead of being furious or feeling betrayed, Don Juan is so completely overwhelmed by the whole emotional ordeal, he asks her to marry him, right there on the spot.
And that is the key takeaway from this whole story. By the time he found out the truth, it was already too late. It didn't matter. The act of proving himself, of putting everything on the line, had already cemented his commitment in his own mind. The facts became irrelevant because his emotions had already signed the contract.
Here's a great way to think about it. It's like the final, crazy bid in a high-stakes auction, okay? The desire for the item is already through the roof. The room is buzzing, people are hesitating, they're weighing the cost, and then one bidder makes an absolutely outrageous all-in move that just stuns the room into silence. Now, that final bid, that's not a logical calculation. It's a shocking public performance of total dedication. And in that moment, the actual value of the thing being sold almost doesn't matter anymore. The focus shifts entirely to the incredible value of the sacrifice. You stop analyzing the deal and you just accept the overwhelming emotional proof that's right in front of your face.
Which leaves us with a pretty heavy question to think about, doesn't it? When a commitment is made under that kind of intense emotional pressure, where logic has been deliberately taken out of the equation, is it really a choice? Or is it just the unavoidable consequence of some truly masterful psychological manipulation?
You know, when you think about seduction, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Probably looks, right? Charm, maybe some charisma. But what if the real secret weapon, the most powerful one, has almost nothing to do with any of that? What if it's a strategy that slips right past all our logical walls and hits us somewhere much, much deeper? We're not talking about a game of bodies here. This is a game of the mind.
So that's the big question, isn't it? Is all this stuff really just about physical attraction? I mean, that's what we're told our whole lives. Good looks are the key, the thing that gets you in the door. But the masters of this game, they knew something else. They knew that looks, that's just the opening act. The real show, the one that creates that deep, lasting connection, that all happens in the mind. And here it is, laid out plain and simple. Physical appearance, maybe 10–15% of the equation. That's it. The whole game is psychology. Wow. That kind of changes everything, doesn't it? So if it's all in the head, what does that even look like in practice? Well, there's a specific strategy for this, and we're gonna break it down.
Okay, so the strategy itself is called spiritual lures, and it's a really fascinating concept. The whole idea is to take seduction from just a physical thing and turn it into something that feels more like a spiritual journey. Sounds pretty lofty, right? So what does that actually mean?
This comes straight from the source material, Law 19. And here's the core of it. You find what someone is deeply insecure about. You know, those little doubts they have about their body, their value, what their purpose is in life. And then you present yourself as the answer. You become the key to some higher, more meaningful experience that feels like it can heal all of that.
So, to put it simply, a spiritual lure isn't about saying, hey, let's have some fun. It's about promising something much bigger, transformation. It's designed to tap right into those nagging questions we all have buried inside us. Am I good enough? What am I even doing here? And the seducer? Well, they position themselves as the one person who holds the key to all those answers.
Okay, so how do you actually pull this off? It really boils down to 3 steps. Step 1 is the setup. You have to seem like you're operating on a different level. You're the artist, the deep thinker, the person who just gets it. Step 2, the hook. This is where you zero in on what they're most anxious about. And then step 3, this is the master stroke. You blend it all together, making the physical part seem like the grand finale of this incredible spiritual journey they're on with you.
So, you might be wondering, who falls for this? I mean, does this work on just anyone? Well, while a lot of people can be vulnerable to it, there's one type of person who is almost the perfect target for this strategy. They're called the lost dreamer.
Picture this person. The lost dreamer lives inside their own head. You know, they've devoured books, movies, fantasies, and they've built this beautiful, perfect world in their imagination. They know exactly what their ideal life, their ideal partner should be like. But then there's reality. And reality is messy, it's chaotic, and it's always a disappointment compared to the world they've dreamed up.
And this is where the lure becomes so powerful. Look at this contrast. On one side, you have the real world, messy, disappointing, never good enough. But on the other side, that's what the seducer offers. They're not just offering a date, they're promising to bring that imaginary world to life. They're saying, I see the world you've built in your head, and I'm the one who can take you there.
All right, so we have our target, the lost dreamer. Now, who's the perfect person to actually use the spiritual lure on them? Well, for that, you need the charismatic. The charismatic is just magnetic. It's more than just being charming or funny. It's this deep inner confidence, this energy and sense of purpose that just radiates off of them. Now, imagine you're someone full of doubt and insecurity. Seeing that kind of unshakable belief in someone else, it's like a moth to a flame. Absolutely irresistible.
So what makes them so appealing? Well, first, they've got that supreme self-confidence. They give off this intense energy, but at the same time, they're a little detached, a little mysterious, which just pulls you in more. They become this sort of enlightened guru figure, And the target starts to think, if I just stay close to this person, maybe some of that confidence, that purpose, maybe it'll rub off on me.
Okay, so we've got the strategy, the spiritual lure. We've got the target, the lost dreamer. And we've got the guide, the charismatic. So what's the goal here? What's the end game? It's not just about getting someone into bed. No, it's about something way, way deeper than that.
And there it is. That's the whole point. To make the physical act, the climax of the whole thing, feel like a spiritual union of two souls. It's about completely reframing it. The target is led to believe this isn't about lust or pleasure. It's destiny. It's the final piece of the puzzle, the necessary fusion of two souls who were always meant to find each other.
To really get a handle on this, I've got the perfect analogy for you. Think about it like this. Most seduction tactics, they're like a vacation brochure. You know, they promise a good time, some fun, maybe a little excitement. But a spiritual lure, that's not a brochure. That's a sacred map.
Let's really dive into that idea. A vacation brochure, right? It's selling a simple trip, a fleeting pleasure. The person handing it to you is basically just a travel agent. But a sacred map? Oh, that's a whole different ballgame. A sacred map promises a profound journey. It promises to help you uncover your lost self, to find your secret destiny. And in that story, the seducer isn't just some person you might date. They are the wise, enlightened guide, the one who holds the key to everything you've been looking for.
And that's the effect, right there. Suddenly, for the target, this isn't a choice anymore. They're not logically weighing the pros and cons of a relationship. They feel like they're being pulled along by fate itself. This connection feels absolutely essential, not just for their happiness, but for the completion of their very soul. It stops being a choice and it becomes their destiny.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty chilling question to think about. When your desire feels so powerful that it seems like destiny, who's the one that's actually holding the map?
You know, what if I told you that one of the strongest bonds you can build with someone has nothing to do with shared hobbies or happy memories? What if it's actually built on a shared secret, a kind of crime against what's considered normal? Okay, let's dive right into this because we are about to break down a technique that basically engineers attraction by tapping into something we all have deep down, a fascination with the forbidden.
Right here. This one sentence, it's pretty much the key to this whole thing. It is a fundamental truth about us. We are just drawn to barriers. The second you label something off limits, boom, it's suddenly the most interesting thing in the room. And this isn't some little personality quirk, you know? It's a seriously powerful psychological force.
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do you take that little spark of excitement for the forbidden and turn it into a deep, lasting connection? Something that feels, well, almost unbreakable. That is the exact puzzle we're going to solve. And the answer, believe it or not, lies in one of the craziest seduction stories in history. Yeah, and this is not just any old story. We are talking about the master of the game himself, the legendary Don Juan, getting completely caught in a trap that used the very same tactics he was famous for. It's this incredible paradox, and it perfectly shows the kind of power we're talking about today. So first, you gotta get a picture of this guy. Don Juan wasn't just charming, he was like a force of nature. For him, seduction was all about the conquest, right? He'd move from one person to the next without ever looking back. His reputation was huge, which is exactly why what's about to happen is so mind-blowing. Okay, so here's the setup. Years ago, Don Juan seduces and then just ghosts this poor orphan girl, Cressida. She was just another conquest to him. But then, fast forward a few years, he's in a park and he sees this unbelievably elegant, wealthy woman. Something about her looks familiar, and he finds out it's Cressida. Only she's not a poor orphan anymore. Now she's a mother, the wife of a very rich man, and totally, completely unattainable. And this is where it gets interesting, because every single one of these points is like another brick in a giant wall between them. She's rich, she's married, she has a kid, and the real kicker, she just flat out rejects him. For a guy like Don Juan, who lived for the thrill of the chase, Cressida just became the ultimate forbidden fruit, the one thing in the world he couldn't have. And bam, look at the effect that barrier had. This is a man who never cared, who never lost sleep over anyone, and suddenly he is completely consumed, totally obsessed. The challenge, the fact that it was impossible, it flipped the entire script on him. The great seducer was now the one getting played. So what happened to Don Juan wasn't some kind of magic. It was pure psychology.
And before we see how Criccietta springs the trap, we really need to get why this works. We need to understand this deep-seated, secret craving we have for transgression, because that is the engine that drives this whole thing. Let's just be super clear about what transgression means here. We're not talking about just being a little mischievous. This is about consciously, deliberately stepping over a line, a social rule, a moral code, you name it. It's the active defiance that actually holds all the power. I mean, think about it. Our entire lives were taught the rules. Don't do this, do that, behave this way. We build our whole lives inside these invisible walls. But there's a little part of so many of us that just wonders, what's on the other side? There's this secret desire to explore the parts of ourselves that polite society says we should hide. Okay, here's a great way to picture it. Imagine there's this incredible abandoned garden, and your whole life you've been told it's cursed, it's off limits. Now, what if someone comes along and convinces you to sneak in with them? The garden itself might be beautiful, sure, but the pleasure you feel is cranked up to 11 because of the thrill, the risk, the secret you now share. You broke the rules together. That memory, it binds you to that person. All right, let's get back to Don Juan and Criccietta, because what she did next wasn't just a random act. Oh no, it was a perfectly calculated, 3-step master plan designed to forge an unbreakable bond, all through the power of transgression. So here it is, the whole playbook. Step 1, she built the barrier, making herself that desirable forbidden fruit. We saw that. Now she's moving to step 2, proposing a shared, crazy, high-stakes act that just shatters a social taboo. This is where the trap is really set, and that leads directly to step 3, that powerful bond created out of a shared secret. So after just torturing Don Juan for ages, Criccietta finally gives in, but on one condition, and it is an absolutely insane demand. He can't just meet her in secret. No, he has to come to her husband's house and literally take her away in broad daylight, right in front of the whole world. I mean, this was more than risky, it was a huge public middle finger to society. And of course, Don Juan does it. He risks his reputation, everything, only to find out it was all a prank, a lie. She wasn't rich, she was just a maid working in that house. But, and this is the most important part, it didn't matter. It didn't matter at all. By the time he found out the truth, the emotional damage was done. The bond was already there. The huge risk he took, the rule they broke together, was way more powerful than the truth. And this gets right to the heart of Law 18 in The Art of Seduction. It's not about love, not in the classic sense. It's about creating this special world for just 2 people, built on a secret they share. That feeling of us against the world, that shared guilt, that's what forges a bond that's so hard to break. I mean, even after finding out he'd been completely played, Don Juan asked Criccietta to marry him. That's how powerful it is. Okay, so the story of Don Juan is old, but the psychology behind it is timeless. And if you fast forward to today, the key is knowing who is most likely to be drawn to the allure of the forbidden. It's really about finding the people who secretly feel trapped by their own lives, who are just waiting, hoping for someone to come along and offer them an escape. And here are a few perfect examples. You've got the pampered kid, someone who has everything they could ever want, but they are dying of boredom. They don't want another gift. They want a thrill, an adventure, a taste of something dangerous. Then you have the lost dreamer. This is someone whose real life feels kind of gray, so they live in a fantasy world. For them, sharing a secret isn't a game. It's like opening a door to a reality that feels more alive. And finally, the crushed star, someone who used to be in the spotlight and desperately misses that intensity. They'll do almost anything to feel that rush again. Each one is vulnerable because they're looking for something their normal life just can't give them. So as we start to wrap this up, let's just zero in on the final result here. Why is this technique of stirring up the forbidden so unbelievably effective? What's the secret sauce that makes it work? Here's the most important takeaway. The act of breaking the rule, that's just the spark. The real power, the real fire, is what happens after. It's the creation of a secret world, a private reality that belongs only to you two, totally separate from the boring, rule-filled world that everyone else lives in. And in their mind, you are now forever linked to that feeling of freedom, of excitement, of danger. You become the only other person on the planet who shares that forbidden memory. Nobody else gets it. Nobody else was there. That kind of exclusivity, that's the glue for an unbreakable bond. And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. Once someone has tasted that thrill of breaking the rules with you, once you've built this secret world on a shared secret, can their old, ordinary life ever really feel like enough again? It's a powerful thought, isn't it? You ever wonder why in the whole game of attraction, sometimes the smartest move you can make is, well, no move at all? Today we're diving into this really powerful, kind of counterintuitive idea that just flips the entire script on seduction. We're going to explore the art of absence, a strategy that can totally reshape the dynamic and turn the person doing the chasing into the one being chased. I mean, just think about it for a second. In any kind of pursuit, dating, business, whatever, there's a rhythm to it, right? But what happens when that rhythm just becomes a boring, predictable drumbeat? You know, when your calls, your texts, all that attention becomes completely expected? Well, the answer is pretty simple and honestly, a little brutal. The magic just fizzles out. That electric tension, the very thing that fuels desire, it goes slack. The other person feels totally secure, and right along with that security, their interest often just evaporates. And boom, just like that, the chase is no fun anymore. And this brings us right to a huge problem in the dynamics of attraction. We'll call it the fading chase. It's this weird paradox where showering someone with your undivided attention can actually be the very thing that pushes them away. It creates this sense of predictability, and predictability is the absolute enemy of desire. So look at it this way. On one side, you have constant pursuit. It makes you predictable. Yeah, it's comforting, maybe, but let's be real. Comfort rarely sparks passion. But on the other side, you have strategic absence, and this injects a massive dose of mystery into the equation. All of a sudden, you're not a sure thing anymore. And that little bit of uncertainty, that's what makes them stop, think, and actually engage. Okay, so how do you fix this? The solution is in a complete reversal of your tactics. It's all about pulling back, not pushing forward. It's about turning the entire dynamic on its head by doing less, not more. And this whole strategy comes straight from Robert Greene's legendary book, The Art of Seduction. It's Law 21, and it's beautifully named. Give them space to fall. The core idea is simple. Once someone gets used to your attention, you have to strategically pull it away to make them realize just how valuable it actually was. Now, here's the key thing to get. This is not about ghosting or just ignoring someone. It is a strategic withdrawal. The goal is to create a vacuum, a void, right where your attention used to be. This void is what makes the other person anxious and insecure, and that feeling compels them to step forward and try to win back what they think they've lost. The whole process really breaks down into 3 deliberate steps. First, you consciously step back. And this isn't a subtle fade out, it's a clear, noticeable shift. Second, that sudden silence acts like a shock to their system. It's a wake-up call that completely shatters their expectations. And finally, driven by this new fear of losing you, they flip the script. They reverse roles and start actively pursuing you. Okay, this isn't just some abstract theory. It's a strategy that has been pulled off masterfully throughout history. So let's look at a classic example from one of the most legendary seducers of all time, Don Juan. His whole thing with a woman named Cressida is a perfect masterclass in this very technique. So the story basically goes like this. Don Juan was chasing Cressida hard. She was this elegant, married woman, and she flat out rejected him, calling him forbidden fruit. His nonstop pursuit got him absolutely nowhere, and he was just getting emotionally exhausted. So he finally just gave up. He sent her a message saying he was leaving town for good, a very clear, definite withdrawal. And what happened next changed everything. The second he pulled back, Cressida, she panicked. Faced with the sudden, total loss of his attention, all those defenses she had built up just crumbled. She immediately got in touch with him, confessed she had feelings, and basically agreed to everything. His withdrawal was the single most powerful move he made in the entire seduction. It completely flipped the power dynamic on its head. So why on earth is this tactic so devastatingly effective? It's not magic, it's pure psychology. The power of absence taps into some of the deepest, most fundamental parts of human desire and, yeah, our insecurity. The tug-of-war analogy is absolutely perfect for this. Imagine it. When you're constantly pulling on that rope, they are simply resisting. They're braced, they have their footing. But the moment you drop your end of the rope, their resistance has nowhere to go. It becomes momentum and they stumble forward, scrambling to get back that tension they totally took for granted. Psychologically, this works on so many levels. First, it shatters the pattern they've gotten used to. It creates a void that they feel an almost desperate need to fill. It triggers that primal fear of loss. We often don't realize what we have until it's about to be gone. And, maybe most brilliantly of all, when they finally do reach out, it feels like it was their idea. You've given them the illusion of control, even while they're reacting exactly the way you planned. And all of this leads to that final, incredible outcome of the strategy, the complete reversal of roles, where the person you were once chasing is now the one actively chasing you.
See, the endgame here is a true masterstroke of psychological influence. You want to make the other person believe that they're the one in charge, that they are the one winning you over. It's an illusion so complete that they become this enthusiastic participant in their own seduction. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question, doesn't it? Is this a deep, insightful look into how human desire actually works? A way to keep passion alive by mastering tension and release? Or is it just a cold, calculated blueprint for psychological manipulation? The answer, I think, probably depends entirely on whose hands are holding the tool.
All right, let's just jump right into this. We usually think of seduction as this game of being charming and kind and giving someone constant attention. But what if the biggest mistake you could possibly make is just being too nice? What if a little bit of pain is actually the secret ingredient to creating an attraction that's impossible to break?
To really get our heads around this kind of counterintuitive idea, we have to look at an absolute master of the game. A guy who was literally legendary for his conquests, but who was, in the end, completely undone by a strategy so powerful it just totally broke him. So, how on earth did that happen?
So this is a story about a master seducer and someone he probably considered a forgotten victim. But in this tale, a chance encounter from the past sets the stage for a just stunning reversal of power, all driven by a calculated act of psychological warfare.
First up, we've got Don Juan. The name itself is basically a legend. His reputation was mythical, with a body count supposedly in the thousands. This was a man who truly believed he was immune to the very games he played. Always in control, always moving on to the next conquest without a single backward glance.
And then, on the other side of the story, there's Cressida. Years before our story begins, she was just another one of his victims, a poor orphan girl he charmed, slept with, and then just abandoned. He disappeared from her life as fast as he came into it. For him, she was a distant memory, but for her, well, she remembered everything.
So years go by, and their paths cross again. But this time the roles are completely reversed. Cressida doesn't come looking for revenge with anger or some big confrontation. No, her strategy is way more subtle and, as we'll see, way more devastating.
She just sort of reappears in the park where Don Juan likes to hang out, but she's totally transformed. She is no longer this poor orphan girl. Now she's this elegant, wealthy woman, walking with a maid and a young son. From all appearances, she has moved on to a much better life.
So, when Don Juan finally gets a chance to talk to her, he does not get the reaction he's expecting at all. Instead of nostalgia or maybe even some anger, he just hits a cold, solid wall. She tells him she's married to a rich man, her life is wonderful, and oh yeah, talking to him is forbidden. It is a complete and total shutdown.
Now, you have to understand, this wasn't just a simple brush-off. This was a completely calculated move. Cressida knew the one thing Don Juan could not handle was being denied. By making herself this forbidden fruit, she inflicted the one emotion he never really felt himself, the pain of wanting something he couldn't have. This is the deliberate creation of a psychological low point.
And the effect is absolutely devastating. The legendary seducer completely unravels. He falls into this severe depression, he's having sleepless nights, he becomes totally consumed with obsessive thoughts about her, he's even dreaming about murdering her husband. The man who never cared about anyone is now completely pathologically obsessed. So, just as Don Juan hits absolute rock bottom, Cressida makes her next move. She has pushed him to the very edge of despair. Now, it's time to pull him back.
He's just completely defeated. He's finally accepted that he can't have her, and he actually decides to leave town for good, sending her one last goodbye message. He has given up all hope. He is at his lowest, most vulnerable point.
And that is when she strikes. After she reads his message of complete surrender, she sends one back. She confesses that she still has feelings for him and agrees to run away with him. Can you even imagine the emotional whiplash for Don Juan? To go from absolute despair to pure, ecstatic hope in a single moment, it's got to be an incredibly intoxicating relief.
So Don Juan rushes to her grand house to sweep her off her feet, only to find her in the maid's quarters. She then reveals the truth. The wealth, the husband, the whole thing was an elaborate prank. But the psychological damage was done. After being dragged through hell and back, Don Juan is so completely hooked by this emotional roller coaster that he doesn't even care about the lie. He asks her to marry him anyway.
This incredible story isn't just some wild historical anecdote. It's a perfect, almost textbook demonstration of a really powerful psychological principle in the art of seduction.
This entire saga is a flawless illustration of Law 20 from the art of seduction. Mix pleasure with pain. The central idea here is that true, deep seduction isn't just about constant kindness, it's deepened by carefully measured doses of its opposite.
So why? Well, because being relentlessly nice is predictable, and honestly, it's boring. Over time, it starts to signal a lack of confidence, a kind of neediness that just kills desire. The human mind craves contrast and novelty. Without the lows, the highs start to lose all their meaning and their impact.
Now, this calculated pain can take a lot of different forms. It could be making the target feel just a little insecure or maybe guilty. It could be creating moments of fear and anxiety. Or, just like we saw with Cressida, it can be a cycle of pulling away followed by a sudden return. The book calls this a rapprochement, which is really just a fancy word for restoring friendly relations. The key is, the lower the low you create, the more powerful and relieving that subsequent high feels.
So why is this emotional roller coaster so incredibly effective? I mean, what is going on there? The psychology behind it is fascinating, and it really taps into some of our most basic human responses. The contrast here is just so stark. Constant kindness is monotonous and, well, safe. But a mix of pleasure and pain, that can be addictive. Predictability kills the erotic charge, but unpredictability cranks it up. A constant need to please can come off as insecure, but having the ability to withdraw and create distance, that demonstrates power. It creates this cycle of tension and release that can build an intense, almost chemical dependency.
You know, here's a really great way to think about it. The seducer is basically acting like a brilliant storyteller, and their target is the main character in that story.
Seriously, think about it. A story where the hero is always happy and never faces any danger would be incredibly dull. We just wouldn't care. It's the moments of devastating loss and fear that make us root for them, right? Those lows make the final victory, that final pleasure, feel so overwhelmingly powerful and earned. The pain is what makes the relief so profound that we become emotionally bound to that character's journey. Seduction, it turns out, works on the exact same principle.
So this leaves us with a final and pretty provocative question. This strategy is undeniably powerful. The story of Don Juan proves that. But it also walks a very, very fine line. Is this just the art of creating deep, lasting attraction, or is it a form of emotional manipulation? Where do we draw that line? And is it a line that even can be drawn? That's something worth thinking about.
Today, we are diving deep into a truly powerful and kind of dangerous seduction strategy, creating an illusion so perfect, so tailored, that it actually feels more real than reality itself. So let's just start with a fundamental truth, right? For a lot of us, adulthood just doesn't live up to the hype. Those youthful dreams of high adventure, epic romance, they fade. And what's left is this void, this quiet ache for what could have been. And that disappointment, that feeling of being unseen, well, it creates a massive vulnerability. It's basically an open door for someone to walk in and offer you a world built just for you, tailored to your deepest, most secret desires. And that, right there, is the whole setup for what we're talking about today. It's how seducers exploit this. Let's call it a glitch in reality. They're not just offering a distraction, they are crafting an entire alternate world that is designed to be way more compelling than the real one.
I mean, the best way to think about it is like a custom-built VR headset for your soul. Imagine putting it on and suddenly you're in a world where you are the hero, where all your wishes are coming true. It's a reality designed from the ground up to fill every single hole in your life. And here's the kicker. That illusion becomes so vivid, so intoxicating, that the real world just can't compete anymore. Taking that headset off is painful. The gray, boring reality feels so wrong that you become desperate to get back into the fantasy that's been made for you.
Okay, so how does this actually work? How is this perfect illusion built? Because it's not magic, you know? It's a very deliberate, almost scientific three-step process. So it all starts with reconnaissance. First, you have to scan your target, figure out exactly what it is they're missing. Then you render that fantasy world by literally becoming the living, breathing embodiment of it. And finally, to make sure it all sticks, you scramble their senses with a storm of emotions, joy, fear, surprise, so their logical brain just shorts out. And this first step is absolutely crucial. You're not guessing here. This is deep profiling. You're looking for the hidden insecurities, the broken dreams, all the unfulfilled desires. That becomes the raw data, the foundation for the entire illusion. So we have the how, that's the blueprint. But who are the master programmers of these virtual worlds? Let's take a look at the seductive archetypes that are absolute pros at this game. We're gonna focus on two big ones that really nail this strategy. First, you have the ideal lover, who customizes the illusion with almost surgical precision. And then you have the siren, who offers this grand, impossible fantasy of pure, unadulterated pleasure. The ideal lover is like a master chameleon. They will study their target relentlessly, their hobbies, their goals, their secret desires, and then they construct a personality that is the perfect compatible match. They literally become the missing piece of their target's soul. Now, the siren, they play a totally different game. They're elusive, they're mysterious, they don't really customize, they just offer this universal escape hatch from reality. They bypass your thinking brain entirely and go straight for the feelings, promising a world with no rules, just pleasure. And what's so fascinating is how these archetypes target specific weaknesses. See how it works? The lost dreamer, who's always got their head in a fantasy novel, is the perfect mark for an ideal lover who can bring that story to life. Or the crushed star, who misses being in the spotlight. The siren gives them a stage and makes them the center of the universe again. It's like a lock and a key. Okay, theory is one thing. Let's see how this plays out in the real world, with some actual case studies where this illusion becomes a trap that's almost impossible to escape. So, take the story of the legendary seducer Don Juan. After he seduces and then abandons Cressida, she brilliantly flips the script. Years later, she creates this illusion that she's now a rich, married, and completely unattainable forbidden fruit. And for a guy like Don Juan, that barrier, that challenge, it was the one thing that could make him obsessed. She knew exactly what button to push. But beyond just temptation, there's a much darker tactic at play here: isolation. This is where you pull the rug out from under your target. You cut them off from their friends, their family, their daily routines, until you are the only thing they have left to cling to. The illusion becomes their only reality because, well, you've taken everything else away. And this just shows you how high the stakes can get. Look at King Fu Chai. He got so completely lost in the world of pleasure that the seductor Shishir built for him that he literally bankrupted his entire kingdom just to build her a palace. He lost everything because the illusion felt more important to him than his own empire. And one last tactic to touch on is leveraging social proof. You know how you're way more likely to go into a busy restaurant than an empty one? It's the same principle. Seducers make themselves seem like they're desired by everyone. When a woman like Lou Andrea Salome was being pursued by geniuses like Nietzsche and Freud, it made her seem infinitely more desirable to others. We are just hardwired to want what other people already want. So, after all that, after seeing how these incredible illusions are built and maintained, we get to the most important question of all. How do you recognize it? How do you protect yourself from getting lost in someone else's game? You know, the key is just awareness. You have to notice the red flags. Does someone seem a little too perfect? Is their attention on you so intense it feels unnatural? Are you slowly but surely drifting away from your friends and your own life? Those are the warning signs that you might be wearing a headset you didn't even realize was on. Ultimately, this explainer isn't meant to be a playbook for manipulation. It's a tool for self-awareness. Because in a world full of carefully crafted illusions, understanding how they work is the first step toward valuing what's actually real. The fantasy is never the real prize. Protecting your own reality is.
All right, today we're jumping straight into one of the most powerful strategies in the art of seduction. We're talking about Law 22, how to use physical lures.
So let's just start with a question that gets right to the heart of it. Think about a time when you've seen someone, or maybe it's even been you, where a powerful attraction just completely short-circuits the rational brain. Logic just goes out the window, right? Well, what if that wasn't an accident? We're about to look at the technique that's designed to make that happen on purpose. You see, here's the problem that always comes up. As you get closer to someone, as things get more intimate, their thinking mind, well, it wakes up. It starts asking questions. What are their real intentions? Can I trust this? Suddenly there's this wall of doubt that can bring everything to a grinding halt. And that's exactly where this law comes in. It's not about arguing with their doubts or trying to reason with them. No way. The whole point is to go around the logical mind completely. You do it by creating this powerful, sensual atmosphere, an experience so intense that their mental defenses just switch off. And I love the language used to describe this. Notice it doesn't say convince them. It says infect them with heat, lure them into lust. The goal is to crank up the temperature, emotionally and physically, until all those practical worries, judgment, what happens tomorrow, they don't get argued away. They literally just melt. So what's actually happening inside someone's head when this works? Well, you can think of it like a battle between two different parts of the brain. You've got the thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is like the logical CEO in the boardroom. But then you have the feeling brain, the limbic system, which is all about raw, primal emotion and desire. A physical lure doesn't even try to talk to the CEO. It speaks directly to that feeling brain, and it speaks so loudly that the CEO can't even get a word in.
Now, this is so important to understand. We have to get this idea out of our heads that this is all about being the best-looking person in the room. It's not even close. The sources make it super clear that conventional looks are maybe 10 to 15% of the whole game. The rest of it, the lion's share, is all about psychology, atmosphere, and your physical presence. It's a game of aura, not just aesthetics.
Okay, so if this is all about creating an aura and a presence, what does that actually look like? How do you do it? To really get a grip on this, we're going to look at the master archetype of the physical lure, the siren. This character is the perfect embodiment of using your presence to just overwhelm someone. The real secret to the siren's power is that she creates an alternate reality, a reality that feels way better than the person's everyday life. Her presence is described as being always heightened and sexually charged. She basically teleports her target out of their boring world of stress and responsibility and drops them into this realm of pure pleasure. So, how is this incredible aura built? It's all about calculated contrasts. On the outside, there's this cool, calm, almost detached vibe, but underneath, there's this simmering, intense sexual energy, and that contrast creates this incredible tension. You add to that a heightened sense of just being there, graceful movements, and this air of mystery, and you get this magnetic pull that makes people feel like they just have to get closer.
All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. This isn't just about having a certain personality. We're talking about a specific practical toolkit. These are the methods you can actually use to turn your simple physical presence into a ridiculously effective weapon of seduction.
Okay, let's break it down. Number 1, movement. It's all about being slow, deliberate, graceful, never rushed. That communicates total control. Number 2, the gaze. This means holding eye contact for just a beat longer than is normally comfortable. It creates instant intimacy. And number 3, the voice. We're talking a slightly lower pitch with pauses that make your words feel heavy and important. You see, each one of these things is a quiet little message sent directly to that feeling brain we talked about, completely flying under the radar of logic.
And that point about the gaze is so specific because it's based on how our brains are wired. Holding eye contact for, say, 2 seconds is normal, it's friendly, but push it to 4, maybe 5 seconds and you cross a neurological line. You've left the friend zone and entered what the brain registers as romantic territory. It's a tiny change that flips a huge switch, all without saying a single word.
But here's the golden rule. The thing that makes this all work or fall apart, it has to feel natural. If any of this comes across as a cheap trick or a forced performance, the whole illusion shatters. The real goal is to create this warm, inviting atmosphere where desire just happens. You have to remember, you're luring, not forcing. You're letting things melt, not trying to smash through a wall.
So let's wrap this all up. What's the big idea here? What are we really talking about? It's about more than just attraction. It's about becoming an architect of reality for another person.
At the end of the day, using a physical lure is all about crafting a sensory experience. An experience that's so immediate, so powerful, and so much more real than that nagging voice of doubt in their head. It's about making the feeling of desire in their body so overwhelming that it becomes the only truth that matters in that moment. Their body feels it, so their mind has no choice but to follow.
And that really leaves us with a final, fascinating question to chew on, doesn't it? When we look at a technique designed specifically to shut down conscious thought, you just have to wonder, how much of attraction is ever really a conscious choice? And how much of it is just a powerful physical reaction that we have absolutely no control over?
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a psychological tactic that is, frankly, incredibly powerful. It's a strategy that taps into our deepest childhood memories to create an emotional bond that's almost impossible to break. We're going to break down how the past can be used to completely control the present.
So, to get us started, I want you to do something for me. Just take a second and think back, way back. What's your earliest, safest, most comforting memory? You know, maybe it's being held by a parent or being read a story, or just that feeling of being totally and completely protected. The feeling, it's incredibly powerful, right? It's something we all want, that universal desire to feel that safe and secure again. And, as we're about to see, some very potent strategies of influence are built to plug directly into that deep-seated need.
All right, so how exactly is this done? Well, the source material we're looking at today calls this technique Law 17, effect a regression. And that name really says it all. It's about making someone regress, to intentionally push them backward emotionally, right back into a childlike state.
The whole idea here is to get someone to relive those intense, comforting feelings of being cared for when they were little. The source talks about creating something called an Oedipal triangle, which sounds complicated, but it's really not. It's just about positioning yourself as the strong parental figure and them as the needy child. You're basically recreating that feeling of total security, where you provide everything they need.
What this strategy does is it intentionally triggers a psychological regression. By stepping into that role of protector, of provider, you're actually encouraging the target to go back to that more vulnerable, childlike emotional place. And when someone's in that state, well, they are way more open to your influence.
So how does this actually play out? The source material lays out a pretty clear three-step game plan. First, you have to figure out what someone was missing from their childhood, some kind of void or longing. Second, you step in and become the parental figure that can fill that void. And finally, you use that powerful position to build an unbreakable emotional dependency.
Okay, so you're probably wondering, who is actually susceptible to this? I mean, who falls for this kind of thing? Well, the source points to a few key archetypes. Let's start with the first one, which they call the novice. And this isn't really about age, it's all about an emotional state.
The novice is often young, super idealistic, and they feel everything so intensely that they think people their own age just don't get it. So what are they looking for? They're actively searching for a parental-type figure. Someone older, more mature, who can not only love them but also guide them, instruct them, and yeah, even scold them a little. They're craving that structure.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The goal, according to one of our sources, is to keep the novice's emotions running quite high. And as this quote says, you don't let them leave their dreamland. You basically become this perfect mix of the strict, guiding parent and the passionate, all-consuming lover. You're literally fulfilling a deep-seated fantasy for them.
Now for the next profile, it's almost the complete opposite of the novice, but believe it or not, they're just as vulnerable. This is the pampered kid.
Okay, so picture this person. They've had everything handed to them on a silver platter, all the material things they could ever want. But what they often missed out on was real discipline or deep emotional guidance. And that leaves them with this constant gnawing sense of boredom and a hidden desire for someone to finally give them the structure their parents never did.
The strategy here is actually kind of brilliant. You play both sides. You give them the novelty and excitement they crave, but you also become that controlling parental figure they've been secretly missing. It's this 1-2 punch of pampering and discipline that creates an incredibly powerful dependency, fulfilling a need they probably didn't even know they had.
So, what is it that makes this whole regression thing so potent? Why does it work so well on these different types of people? Well, it all comes down to a really simple but incredibly powerful analogy that just perfectly explains the whole mechanism.
This quote just nails it. The source uses this analogy of a favorite childhood blanket. Think about that.
You're not just offering them a relationship. No, you're finding that one thing in their past that they associate with absolute total safety and comfort, and you are literally weaving yourself into the fabric of that memory.
See, the bond that gets created here has almost nothing to do with logic or what you have in common in the present. It's forged in that irresistible emotional pull of their safest, most treasured childhood experiences. You're not just a person anymore. You become the living, breathing embodiment of security itself.
And that really brings us to our final thought for today. This dynamic, this powerful pull we have towards a parental figure who can give us both comfort and control, it's a huge undercurrent in so many human relationships. Now that you know how to spot the pattern, the real question is, once you see it, can you ever really unsee it?
Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're dissecting a seriously powerful psychological tactic, that one single action that can flip the switch from mere attraction to an unwavering, total commitment. It's a concept that's both risky and kind of brilliant, and we're going to break down exactly how and why it works. I mean, it's the age-old question, isn't it? And according to the source material we're digging into, the answer often comes down to a single critical moment, a point where even the slightest bit of hesitation can make the whole thing just fizzle out permanently. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the high-stakes problem, what we're calling the standoff. Then, we'll unveil the solution, which is Law 23. We'll see it play out in a classic historical example, break down its key parts, and then wrap it all up with a really cool strategic analogy. All right, let's start by setting a scene that you've probably been in, or at least seen. That make-or-break moment where a connection is at its absolute peak, but it's also incredibly fragile. This is that moment of maximum tension. You know they want you, they know they want you, but for whatever reason, they just aren't ready to admit it or do anything about it. And the source material is crystal clear here. If you're the one pursuing and you act timid or coy at the stage, it's over. The spell is broken, the moment's gone, and the whole thing just stagnates. So, how do you break that standoff? Well, this is where the solution comes in. It's a powerful, decisive action that is all about forcing the situation forward, and it's a core principle of influence. And here it is. The source material calls this mastering the art of the bold move. And as you can see, this isn't just another little step. We're talking about the final action, the one designed to seal the deal and push that person from just wanting you to being fully committed. Okay, so what does that actually mean in plain English? It's about striking, without hesitation, the second you feel the other person is emotionally on board, but their logical brain is holding them back. The whole point is to create this emotional flood that just short-circuits their rational thinking, leaving absolutely no room for them to second-guess anything. All right, now this is where it gets really interesting, because we're going to see how this exact principle plays out in a famous story from history. This is where the theory gets very, very real. So, the story features the legendary Don Juan, and he is completely obsessed with this woman, Cressida. She has created the ultimate psychological barrier for him. She's positioned herself as this rich, married, totally unattainable, forbidden fruit, the one thing he can't have. Now, this was an incredible risk. Don Juan is at his breaking point, about to leave town, when she hits him with this insane demand. He has to come to her house in broad daylight and essentially take her away. I mean, think about it. The public scandal could ruin them both, but she makes it clear that's the final condition. And Don Juan's response? It's immediate. He gets it. He understands that this crazy, high-risk, high-reward demand is his only shot at victory. He doesn't think twice, he doesn't hesitate. He just goes on the offensive. And this just perfectly illustrates the point. This one single, decisive public act finalized the entire seduction. And it was so powerful that, get this, even after Don Juan found out Cressida had been lying about being rich, his emotional commitment from that one action was so strong that he still asked her to marry him. So now that we've seen it in action with Don Juan, let's actually deconstruct why the bold move is so incredibly effective. It really boils down to two key psychological shifts. The power of this move really comes from these two components working perfectly together. And the first one, well, it's probably the most important: the complete and total rejection of hesitation. First, you absolutely have to throw hesitation out the window.
Any sign of awkwardness, any timidity, it just signals that you're stuck in your own head, worried about your own fears. But a bold, unhesitating move, that sends a totally different message. It says you're so overwhelmed by their charm that you literally can't help yourself. And second, you have to take the offensive. The dynamic isn't going to escalate by itself. The source argues that this move is necessary to push the target right past all of their own internal doubts, their fears, their logical objections. You are forcing the situation to a final conclusion. This all brings us to a really powerful way of thinking about this whole maneuver. You see, it's not just some emotional act, it's deeply strategic. It's actually a lot like the final moves in a game of chess. This chess analogy is honestly the perfect way to understand the psychology here. In this high-stakes game, every single move counts, especially the last one. So in this game, you're the player, the seducer. The target is your opponent. And the piece you're sacrificing, it's not a knight or a queen. You're sacrificing your own timidity, your own fear of the consequences. And that move is so sudden, so shocking, that it prevents the target from thinking clearly or coming up with any kind of counter strategy. So here's the crucial point. The bold move is designed to completely bypass logic. It's a calculated risk that forces an emotional conclusion to the game before the other player even realizes what's happening. And that leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought to consider. In the complex game of human desire and influence, maybe the greatest risks aren't just an option. Maybe they are the only path to winning the greatest rewards. Something to think about. Welcome to The Explainer. So, you think you've won the game of seduction? Well, today we're talking about what might be the most dangerous part of all, what happens after the victory. All right, let's get right into this, because it's a huge paradox, right? That moment of pure triumph, when emotions are at an all-time high. That's exactly when it can all fall apart. See, the real danger? It's not in the chase. It's in the silence that comes after. And yeah, this feeling actually has a name, the after effects. Think of it like a huge fireworks show. You're dazzled, it's amazing, and then it's over. And all that's left is smoke and silence. That's the letdown. The spell is broken, and suddenly feelings can swing the other way, towards disappointment, or even worse, just boredom. And that right there is the biggest threat to making any seduction last. So to really get a handle on this, what's a better way than to dive into a story? A classic tale, actually, where a legendary master of seduction gets totally played by someone he thought was just another victim. Okay, so you've got Don Juan. This guy was the master of the game. His list of conquests, literally in the thousands. And on that list was Crishetta, a poor orphan girl. He played the sympathy card, spun up this whirlwind romance, got what he wanted, and then, poof, he vanished. Just left her with nothing. A classic cold-hearted move. And for years, that's all she was. Just another name on his long, long list. But then, one day, everything changes. He spots this unbelievably elegant, wealthy woman, and he's captivated. And then comes the shocker. It's Crishetta. Only she's not the girl he left behind. She's transformed. And as far as he can tell, she's married to some rich, powerful guy. And boom, right there. That's the moment the whole game just flips on its head. Crishetta, the victim he abandoned, is about to show him who the real master is. So here's the key takeaway. As an orphan, Crishetta was, well, she was easy, she was available, and because of that, she was forgettable. But this new Crishetta, oh, she was the complete opposite. Unattainable, married, rich, and the biggest one of all, forbidden. All of a sudden, she wasn't just some old memory. She was a challenge he became obsessed with. And he becomes totally consumed by this. I mean, why wouldn't he? People have this weird thing where we're just drawn to what we can't have. She flat out rejected him, told him it was forbidden for them to even talk. But did that push him away? No way. It just poured gasoline on the fire. He's having sleepless nights, dreaming about her. He's desperate to win her back. So he's at his breaking point, right? He decides he's just gonna leave town, but not before sending her one last desperate note. And right there, in his moment of total surrender, she makes her move. She confesses she still has feelings, agrees to run away with him. I mean, he is over the moon. But when he shows up to collect his prize, well, that's when he gets the shock of his life. Get this, the wealth, the powerful husband, this whole new life, it was all fake. A brilliant, massive prank. She knew deep down the only way to get the great Don Juan chasing her again was to become the one thing he couldn't have. And what's crazy is, even after he finds out he's been totally played, he's so hooked that he gets down on one knee and asks her to marry him.
So he's offering her everything, the ultimate prize. But Cressida, who's now holding all the cards, is about to play her final, most brilliant move. And this is where she shows she's a true master of avoiding the after effects.
I mean, think about that for a second. She went through all this trouble, this huge, elaborate plan, just to win him back. And it worked. He's right there, proposing marriage. And her answer? No. So why on earth would she do that?
And her reason? It just perfectly explains this whole danger. She knew exactly who he was, a creature of the chase. She understood that the second he owned her, through marriage, the game would be over. The challenge would be gone, his desire would fizzle out, and he'd be right back to his old tricks, looking for the next conquest.
She totally got it. Marriage meant security. It meant predictability. And that would have shattered the spell instantly. The forbidden fruit would just become regular fruit. All that tension would just evaporate, and the seduction would die, replaced by those after effects we talked about, boredom and routine.
So let's break down her strategy here, because it's genius. Instead of marriage, she offers him basically a situationship. And this wasn't some kind of compromise, not at all. It was a power move. By keeping that distance, she made sure he could never fully conquer her. She deliberately kept things a little unstable, a little unpredictable, and that meant he could never, not for 1 second, take her for granted.
You see, her story is more than just a cool revenge plot. It's the perfect example of this final law of seduction. It's a huge warning sign that says, hey, the conquest isn't the finish line. In fact, it's the start of a whole new, much trickier game. And the law itself spells it out pretty clearly. Beware the after effects. It basically says a real seduction never truly ends. You can't let the other person take you for granted. If you want to keep them hooked long term, you have to be willing to use things like absence, even create a bit of conflict, just to keep them on their toes. So how do you actually fight this? How do you stop things from getting boring? The source material gives us 3 main tactics. First up is strategic absence. You gotta be willing to pull back sometimes. Give them a chance to actually miss you. It's in that space that desire really comes back to life. Second, you need to maintain a little bit of healthy conflict. Now, I'm not talking about picking fights all the time. It's about stopping things from getting too comfortable, too predictable. A little bit of friction is what keeps the spark going. And last, and this is probably the most important, never let them think they've got you all figured out. Keep a little bit of mystery, something they can't quite put their finger on. That way you're never taken for granted. Let's circle back to that fireworks analogy, because it just fits so perfectly. The seduction itself, that's the grand finale. The big, loud, skylighting spectacle. It's absolutely breathtaking. But the after effects? That's the silence that follows. It's the smoke clearing, the crowd going home, and that lingering feeling of, well, what now? To keep the magic going, you can't just be a one-and-done show. You have to keep lighting those little unexpected sparklers, those moments that hold their attention, and remind them just how amazing the big show really was. So what's the bottom line here? Seduction isn't a trophy you win and put on a shelf. It's a tightrope walk. And true mastery isn't about that first successful step, the initial capture. It's about staying on that rope, skillfully balancing between being there and being gone, between comfort and tension. It's about doing whatever it takes to keep the magic alive. You know, when you think about seduction, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's all about physical appearance, right? It's gotta be looks. But what if I told you that's almost completely wrong? That the most powerful seducers in history weren't always the most beautiful, but were absolute masters of psychology, architects of a reality they built from the ground up just for their target. And this right here, this insight from our source material, it's the key that unlocks everything. Seduction isn't just simple attraction. Oh no, it's a carefully constructed psychological game. It really has so little to do with what you look like and everything to do with what you can make someone feel, think, and ultimately, what you can make them believe. So I want you to think of a master seducer, not as some smooth talker, but as a magician. A magic trick doesn't just happen. First, the magician has to build a stage. They have to control the lighting and get the audience's complete and undivided attention. Only then can they perform that grand illusion that just leaves everyone mesmerized. Well, seduction works in the exact same way.
So, let's break this whole performance down, shall we? We're going to start with setting the stage. Then, we'll look at a pretty shocking historical example of it in action. After that, we'll reveal the grand illusion itself, and finally, we'll show you how to start recognizing this performance out there in the real world. Okay, first up, the foundation of the entire act, controlling the environment. You see, a magician needs a stage where the outside world completely vanishes and all the focus is on them. For the seducer, this stage is built through one really powerful and, let's be honest, kind of toxic strategy. And that strategy is isolation. As Robert Greene lays it out, the goal is to pull the target out of their comfortable, familiar world and drop them into a new one where you are the only point of reference. It's all about removing their safety nets. Now, isolation doesn't mean locking someone in a room. It's a much more subtle psychological process. It's about disrupting their habits, taking them to places they've never been, and slowly, one by one, cutting the threads that connect them to their support system. You basically make them feel like they're in a foreign land, where you are their one and only guide. This comparison just lays it all out so perfectly. On one side, you have a person's normal life. It's like a fortress of security built with friends, routines, and a sense of control. But the seducer systematically dismantles that fortress, replacing every single element of safety with vulnerability and a growing dependence on them and them alone. This quote from the source text is, well, it's chilling because it's so accurate. It captures the end goal perfectly. Once a person is isolated and stripped of their comforts, their rational mind just starts to weaken. They become emotionally dependent, and they start seeking comfort from the very person who engineered their isolation in the first place. But look, this isn't just theory. Let's dig into a historical case that shows just how devastating this strategy can be. The seduction and ultimately the downfall of King Fu Chai in ancient China is maybe the ultimate example of isolation used as a weapon. So Shishir was a spy, specifically trained to seduce King Fu Chai, and she executed this plan perfectly. First, she removed his safety nets, convincing him to ignore his trusted advisors, his family, everyone. Then she imposed her new world by getting him to build this magnificent palace, a gilded cage really, far away from his duties. And just like that, the king was completely isolated on a stage of her own creation. So here's the crucial part. Once he was physically and emotionally isolated, his world shrank until it contained only one person, Shishir. His duties as a king, the affairs of his state, his entire sense of who he was, all of it was just consumed by his obsession with her. The result was a total catastrophe. He spent the entire state treasury on her palace, 100%. So when his old enemy returned to attack, the once powerful king was so mentally and strategically weakened that he couldn't fight back. He ended up taking his own life. That is the power of a perfectly set stage. Okay, so the stage is set, the target is isolated, and they're vulnerable. Now it's time for the second part of the performance, the grand illusion itself. You see, once the target is off balance from the isolation, their mind is uniquely open to suggestion. This part of the trick is all about manipulating their perception of time and reality, filling their mind with a fantasy so powerful that it actually becomes more real and way more desirable than their actual life. Let's be honest, reality can often be disappointing. It rarely lives up to the ideals we had when we were young, and that creates a void, a deep-seated desire for something more. This strategy works by tapping directly into that void. A seducer doesn't create new desires, they find the ones that are already there and present themselves not just as a person, but as the living embodiment of that dream. This illusion is built with these vague promises that hint at a future just filled with everything the target feels is missing from their life. It's not about concrete plans, it's about an intoxicating feeling. And over time, the line between this beautiful illusion and their reality starts to blur, until falling for the seducer feels less like a choice and more like destiny. So what happens when these two parts of the magic trick finally come together? Well, when that perfectly prepared stage of isolation is combined with a mesmerizing illusion, the effect becomes almost impossible to resist. And this is the core of the whole strategy. Isolation dismantles a person's defenses, their ability to reason clearly. And then the fantasy provides them with the perfect justification to just surrender completely. I mean, why would they want to return to their boring, normal life when you are offering them the world they've always dreamed of?
Now that we've pulled back the curtain on this performance, I bet you're going to start to see it everywhere. These psychological strategies, they're not just confined to romance or ancient history. They are powerful tools of influence that are used in so many areas of modern life. Think about it. A political leader who erodes trust in traditional institutions, the media, science, government, what are they doing? They're removing the safety nets, isolating their followers. Then they present the grand illusion, a fantasy of a perfect nation that only they can deliver. Or a luxury brand that creates this exclusive insular community around its products. That's the stage. Then it sells not just an item, but the dream lifestyle that comes with it. That's the illusion. The stage and the illusion are absolutely everywhere. So, the crucial takeaway here isn't to learn how to perform this trick, but to learn how to recognize it, to see the stage being built around you, to notice the smoke and mirrors of a grand illusion. Because once you understand how the magic works, you can't be fooled by it. The only question is, where is it happening to you right now?
All right, let's get into it. You know, there are these invisible forces all around us, kind of pushing and pulling our decisions, shaping what we want, who we look up to, and even what we believe. It's a whole system that's working just under the surface, and most of the time, we don't even notice it.
I mean, really think about it for a second. That brand new gadget you felt like you had to have, that public figure who just seems to get you, or that one brand you're just super loyal to. What if that powerful pull wasn't just random chance? What if it was all by design?
So today, we are pulling back the curtain on this really fascinating and honestly really powerful concept called soft seduction. And let's be super clear right up front. We are not talking about romance here. Nope, we're talking about a highly strategic playbook for influencing the masses.
So what is it really? Well, at its core, soft seduction is the art of getting past our logical, rational brain. Instead of trying to win you over with facts and figures, it takes a shortcut and goes straight for our emotions, our desires, our insecurities. It's all about creating this powerful connection that feels incredibly personal, even when it's being aimed at millions of people all at once.
Now, get this, because this number is probably going to surprise you. Physical appearance, it only accounts for about 10 to 15% of this kind of influence. That completely shatters the idea that you have to look a certain way to be persuasive. The real power, where the magic really happens, is in understanding human psychology. It's a mind game, plain and simple.
And this right here, this is the end game. It's not about making a single sale or getting one vote. It's about creating a tribe, a following of people who aren't just customers. They're fans, they're devotees. They're the people who hang on every word, who trust what you say, and who feel like they have a real connection with you.
So, you might be asking, how do they actually do it? Well, the masters of this game have this powerful toolkit, right? And it's filled with these psychological triggers. Let's break down 4 of the biggest weapons in their arsenal.
Okay, first up, we've got the weapon of liking. This sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But its power is absolutely massive. We are just wired to say yes to people, to brands, to ideas that we already know and like.
And here's why it works so well. It's not really about the ingredients in the lipstick, is it? It's about the connection you feel to the person recommending it. When you admire Vanita Singh's story, her hustle, her personality, you unconsciously transfer that trust over to her products. Liking her builds a bridge, and influence just walks right across it.
Next up in the toolkit is authority. This one taps into our natural instinct to listen to and respect experts. When someone we see as a credible authority figure tells us something, we tend to just switch off our own critical thinking and go with it.
I mean, think about it. If some random guy on the street told you to buy a certain protein powder, you'd probably just walk on by. But when an action hero like Vidyut Jamwal, a guy whose entire brand is built on being in peak physical condition, endorses it, our brains take a shortcut. We think, well, he's an expert in fitness, so that stuff must be legit. His authority becomes the product's credibility, instantly. All right, weapon number 3 taps into one of our deepest, most primal needs, the need to belong. This is social proof. It's the idea that we figure out what's right or what's cool by looking at what other people are doing. Let's be real, we're kind of herd animals.
This is a perfect example of how perceived demand creates actual demand. You stumble across a YouTube channel with 400,000 subscribers. Instantly, your brain goes, whoa, a lot of people think this is worth watching. That huge number signals that thousands of others have already given it their stamp of approval, which makes you way more likely to hit that subscribe button. We just assume if everyone else is doing it, it must be the right move. And for our final weapon, we have scarcity. This one plays directly on our FOMO, our fear of missing out. It's a simple rule of human nature. We see things as more valuable when they're less available. So why is this so effective? It's simple psychology. What is rare is valuable. An actor who is everywhere, all the time, they just become part of the background. But an actor who's selective, who seems busy and hard to get a hold of, that creates a buzz. Their limited availability makes every single appearance feel like a special event, which drives up their perceived value and leaves us always wanting just a little bit more.
Now, these weapons are powerful on their own, but the true masters of influence, they don't just use one at a time. They combine them. They embody these specific, powerful personalities that we call archetypes. And this, my friends, is where psychology turns into a performance. Think about an archetype like the siren, for example. This is a brand or a person who represents fantasy and allure. They pull you in with liking, but then use scarcity to make you feel like their attention is a rare prize. Or what about the rake, who offers a little bit of danger and excitement? These aren't just characters from old stories, they're psychological blueprints. Brands, influencers, and leaders adopt these traits to build a magnetic persona that hooks us on a deep, almost unconscious level. So, once you start to see these weapons and these archetypes, the entire blueprint of influence just snaps into focus. It's like you've been given a special pair of glasses. All those invisible forces we talked about at the beginning, suddenly you can see them clearly. You now have the key to decode the world of persuasion that's happening all around you. And trust me, once you see it, you'll see it everywhere. It's in your social media feed, it's in the commercials you watch, it's in the way politicians frame their speeches. The principles of liking, authority, social proof, and scarcity are working 24/7, shaping what we think and driving what we do on a massive, massive scale.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, with this knowledge, you're not just a passive member of the audience anymore. You're an informed observer. So the next time you feel that powerful, irresistible pull towards someone or someone, just pause for a second. Ask yourself, what's really going on here? Which weapons are being used? And maybe the most important question of all, who's playing the game on you?